This craziness, this sickness in this country now is shot through the whole society. You know, people in law enforcement have also succumbed to right-wing extremism and white nationalism. Again, what this points up is how pervasive and vast a problem this is, and we will be dealing with it for a long time.
Jills, we're such fucking shameless hacks. Alright, who likes Metallica? Who likes when people dedicate Metallica songs to Dimebag Darrell? We're big fans of Dimebag's work, so this is One by Metallica. Sing along if you know the song. On the road again. I just can't wait on the road again. I'm inside of all this bullshit with my friends. Now I'm waiting on the road again. What's up, guys? On the road again. What's up, that's the policeman? Still I think that's it. I'm getting out to spin. Now I'm waiting on the road again. What's up, guys? On the road again. Like a bunch of fucking we go where we wanna. Yeah, we're the yeah, but no, I never wanna. Yeah, I wanna. Oh yeah. I see a video. Oh yeah. You have to fucking do the follow up the man. Now you're way down the road again. Guitar! What's up, man? Oh yeah. Like a bunch of fucking video where we wanna. Yeah, but I'm not your friend. I'm going to help you out, cause I never wanna. Yeah, I wanna. Oh yeah. I just can't wait on the road again. They'll have to shoot me if they want to shoot him. Now you're moving down the road again. I can't wait on the road again. Na 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 na. Ladies and gentlemen. My friend, this is one of our altar boys here at the ministry. His name is Little Timmy, and he wants to introduce the next song. Timmy!
This next song is about the time when I was doing real bad in my life, and I needed the Lord.
Needed the Lord!
And so the Lord, He went through Father Ted here. Father Ted brought me to his office after church, and he laid his hands all over me. And Jesus touched me. Jesus touched me through Father Ted. Father Ted's hands all over me brought me Jesus.
Amen. Now we'll continue to bring you Jesus every time you are a bad boy and you are a naughty boy. This song is called Rickety Bridge.
When you work late nights in dark, repulsive conditions, you probably expect to get paid. They don't. There are thousands of hard-working, underpaid men and women in your city right now. They're called musicians. Any given night of the week, they put themselves on the line for you and your drunk friends. The problem? You're not even there. The beer he got paid with tonight will never keep him warm. That guitar she still owes 12 payments on will never love her back. You can help. Go to your local dive bar right now. Pay the cover charge. Sit down with one of these outcasts and put yourself in their shoes. Take one home. Hell, take two if you want. Support local music. Sleep with a musician tonight. Without you, all we have left are ballads.
Mama taught me how to land on my feet. I have this way of finding trouble. It's never far. Wherever I go, take one step after another. You gotta move like a rolling stone. Hey! believe, my pretty lady, that it's time for me to move along. Take one step after another. You gotta move like a rolling stone. Hey! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah! Hey! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah!
And my mic is now working. Yay. I love that song. Yeah, part of my incredibly cool world life history stuff involved being in some music videos along the way, and that's cool. And that awesome public service announcement that came earlier in the pre whatever the before times, before I started talking into the microphone here. Things are well. I hope everyone that's watching is doing good. If you are new to the channel, please consider throwing me a follow. I am a small streamin' Andy. That means that I don't do this for the money or for the power or for the glory. I just do it because it's fun. And it started with, actually, since I'm kind of just riffing on stuff today, it started with during COVID. Because I'm like way too old to be a streamer. I'm 48 years old, so like cool streamers are much younger than me, and I will never be a cool streamer, but that's okay. And during COVID, I was missing my friends, because we were all missing our friends. There's something on my screen. There we go. And so I decided that I would I had a conversation. My buddy Che called me one night on the old Facebook Messenger, and we had a good chat, and it was just so fucking wonderful to connect with a person. I was like, well, why not? Why don't I I'll do these things, and I'll call them yammerings, and I'll just get friends of mine to join me, and we'll have a conversation. And that's how that started, and it was all Facebook Live, and it was on my phone. And it evolved into whatever this is now, is mostly me just talking about whatever I want to talk about, which is fun. I enjoy it. But yeah, if you're new, consider giving us a follow. And by us, I mean me. I was using the royal us because I am actual royalty. I am not royalty. I almost pulled the line there. My favorite, I'm 164th Cherokee Princess, because that's what white people say all the time, but in fact I am not. I am a Western European shit mix, and that does not make me special. Last night was a fun night. Last night my friend Miguel, who plays keyboards in one of my bands, Bodies of Everest, he had himself one of them birthday things you do, and a mutual friend of ours had a fire in the backyard, and we all went, and oh man, it was so good. Just being around humans is always, it's one of those things that we take for granted, but damned if it wasn't just a gorgeous night. And I got conversations with friends I haven't seen in a while, so I'm in a pretty good mood. I also drank several beers, but I didn't drink enough beers to make today a painful day, so that's good. Although I am drinking coffee from my Marvel Civil War cup. The only Civil War that we should be making a big deal out of, because the other one was stupid and bad people lost a war, and they should have. So there we go. Yeah, so far so good. The day is gorgeous outside. I live here in the great city of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. That's right. I'm a Canadian. Probably can tell by all the times I say "a." We don't actually do that, but whatever. It works. So yeah, it's a lovely day. and I usually I stream on Saturdays for sure, usually 12 till 3 ish in Mountain Time. So whatever time it says on your clock, now is when I stream. Unless you're watching this on YouTube after the fact, which is highly unlikely. But if you are, not on your clock now. That's not how time works. Yeah, so I figured I'd do some. I've got a few ideas for things I want to talk about today. I should mention I always end my stream with what I lovingly call my weekly humiliations. No one should ever feel obliged to send me money. I have a decent day job. I am not in it to win it. This is not going to be like my career. I actually like my day job. I'm not one of those people who's dumb enough to say if I won the lottery I would keep working, because fuck that. I would be the greediest shit just sitting around doing nothing and getting all that sweet lotto money. But I do have a certain enjoyment of the work that I do, so that's kind of cool. No one needs to send me money. My weekly humiliations are, I was trying to think of a way to, because people often do want to send you money, and when you're a streamer, and they usually do this in the form of subscriptions. Now, I'm not big enough to need to worry about subscriptions, but it occurred to me one day, I was like, one day I will have enough followers that subscriptions will become an option. And subscriptions mean that I get that sweet money, but it also means that Jeff Bezos gets that sweet money. And I don't want to give Jeff Bezos sweet money. In fact, I'd like to give him herpes. But I don't feel like I don't have herpes. It would be a whole process just to give it to him. So probably not that's one Make-A-Wish Foundation wish that's never going to come true. Although what a great wish that would be. Anyways, enough about that. Yeah, I just decided that I didn't want to run the risk of accidentally making the richest man on earth even more money, even if it's just sort of a theoretical one day maybe kind of thing. So I came up with the idea of the weekly humiliations. If people want to send me money via e-transfer to bigjimyammers@gmail.com, then that's cool. And I have this little chart that I made, my humiliation ticker. If you don't do anything, I'm still going to humiliate myself. I'm still going to, my hands, wrong hand. For free, you get the good karaoke. Today's good karaoke, I think, is going to be Hungry Eyes by Eric Carmen, which is probably a terrible idea because I don't actually know the song, but it's just so cheesy and I thought it'd be fun. At the $10 donation, and this is total. So, I will just do this one anyways, because I always do, whether people give me money or not. At the $10 token, you get the bad karaoke. And I forget what I did. I literally was like last minuting this. So my bad karaoke, the hell is it? Rawhide by the Blues Brothers. Realistically, I should switch those, but I'm not going to. I'm going to sing them both, so who gives a shit? At $20 is Scarioke, and that means the chat gets to decide what I sing. The last time that happened, I sang Nickelback, and so fuck. At $35, I have a trumpet, and you can pick a song, and I will pay trumpet along with it, and it will be awful. And then at $50 is Hell to Pay. All that means is that you guys get to find some way to humiliate me. So yeah, don't send me money. You don't need to send me money. If you're going to send money to somebody, send it to groups like the indigenous groups that have been in the news for, yesterday in Canada was Truth and Reconciliation Day, and they will probably do a lot better things with the money. I will just snort acetaminophen or something stupid like that. Ew, what a horrible idea. I guess people, would do that. I don't know. It seems dumb. Anyways, I'm babbling. But yeah, so this is basically just gonna be me chatting. And if you're watching and you want to chat, I highly encourage. Like I say, I'm a small streamer. There's not going to be a whole lot of people on the channel. I usually have a few diehard friends / fans that join us, and hopefully we will see some of them. But if not, I'm just talking. And if you want to talk with me, it'll even show up right over there. So that's kind of fun. Yeah, that was like the boomeriest intro you could ever do. Boomer, boomer, boomer. I'm not actually a boomer, but everyone thinks I am because Generation X is forgotten and doesn't exist. I am part of the ass end of Generation X. That's too old to be called that exennial where you're, on the cusp. I'm just slightly over that. But I am what's called Nintendo Wave Generation X. And that means that we were effectively bludgeoned into submission by our parents. And we don't have any real power. We will never have good jobs. We will never have good lives, and yet it's better for us than the generations that came afterwards because capitalism is just so super neat. That's a thing. Welcome to the world, kids. Yeah. So if you're watching on YouTube and you want to be involved in the chat, I do have my phone open, which means I can glance down at it occasionally, but you're better off to just hop on over to the old twitch.tv/abiguglygym. I go by Big Ugly Jim. That was taken, so I am just a Big Ugly Jim. I'm not the Big Ugly Jim. Didn't want to that sounds pretentious whenever people are like, the real whatever. Like, are you? Or are you one of many? Hey, someone in chat. What do we got here? Let's see. I am Canadian, my good friend. Nothing like a positive, happy message about hope and optimism for the future generations. I like truth in advertising. And I've talked about things that sort of relate. For me, just don't try, just suck. Yeah, there is no future. There is no hope. There is only capitalism. I talk quite a bit about things like the housing market. I am in a rental property. I will die in a rental property because no one gave me a giant sum of money to put towards owning a home. And I came along at a time when even in my career, I work in computers, and there were once upon a time people that made big stacks of the filthy monies, and I was never one of them. I came along at a point where all of a sudden we were bringing that back and stuff. So being poor is really not a thing. I've never had a problem with it. I do well. My bills are paid. My house is not on fire yet. So I get through just fine. But I look at my children and I look at the world that they've inherited, because I have many children, and it's just fucking unfair. The reality is the world is stacked against you. Sorry, kids. Gloom, but there's always coffee, so that helps. They'll find a way. And yeah, I do have a hopeful theory that essentially, my generation absolutely will get bypassed. But I have a hopeful theory that as the boomers start to retire en masse, that will open up opportunity, and a lot of companies are kind of wanting to cash in on the youths. So I think that will open up a lot of opportunities for millennials and Gen Z kids to get the kinds of jobs I never got. So I'm hopeful about that. Maybe your lives will be better than mine. Maybe it'll just be my generation that sucks farts. But either way, I also think that much of what we consider about how life is pretty dumb. Like the 9-to-5 job concept is pretty dumb. Don't get me wrong. That's not an endorsement of the gig economy, which is like the number one destruction of the worker. But I think the cool thing is millennials and Gen Z have the opportunity to sort of redefine the rules. Are things better now, or were they better 50 years ago, Jim? So that's a loaded question. I would say for middle class white people, which are, only one small group, I would say things are a lot worse. And I would say they're the loudest voices because they're the only ones that get heard. With the last 50 years, there's been a lot of improvements for a lot of other groups. Women, gay people, people of color, transgender people, like in very real terms, things are better for them. But life in general, I think our economy is garbage. I think capitalism is failing us and going to fail in general. But who knows? Who knows? Let's see. In terms of opportunity and quality of life, I think opportunity is really bad right now, especially for people who are just starting out. There are so I have many children in my universe, not because I'm a creep, but because I'm a parent, and I have children who are, in an appropriate age to be, beginning the job hunt, beginning the career establishment, all of that stuff. And I really feel like there's not a lot of opportunity for them. And at the same time, there's a need for them to work the 86 jobs in the gig economy just to keep the lights on. And therefore, going to school is difficult. And it's a real catch-22 right now. So opportunity, I don't think is there. Quality of life, again, depends on your circumstance. I look at access to education and healthcare. I would say education is farther and farther away from what people can do. Healthcare is good, at least in Canada, but needs to be better. Some of us would like to have teeth one day. Attitudes about women and black and non-binary, I definitely think those are improved. I think there is backlash from that, but by and large, I think that the experiences of people of color, of women, of non-binary people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, are much better than when I was a kid. So much better 1971. I would say if we could take the economic opportunity of 1971 and apply what we have done in terms of the improvements for social conditions for non-honky middle-class white men, things would be much better in 1971. But that wasn't the case. When I was a kid, faggot was an insult, and we found it uncomfortable. My generation knew that was a bad thing, and all kinds of other words. But we knew it was a really shitty thing to do, but we were also very powerless. My parents' generation crushed us under their thumbs, not my parents, but that generation, and the Silvers that came before them. There was, the idea of us talking back. We had punk rock. That's pretty much it. And in the people of color had things like hip hop, were our only ways of really standing up and saying, "Fuck, I'm not doing what you're saying. I'm gonna go my own way. I'm gonna keep poking you on this, you pessimistic socialist fuck," he says lovingly. Of course you will, and I appreciate and love that about you. But I think it's an interesting conversation because there's a certain "Make America Great Again" habit that people have been spraying out in the last few years, and that question of when was America great is totally valid. For me, I as a hideous socialist monster, I would say instead of "Make America Great Again," let's make America great and make Canada great, or at least better, because I think that all people have the opportunity to sort of do better, and the world over, every country can do things to improve the quality of life for everybody and to include everybody in the conversation, and that to me would make America great. People don't do enough to stand up for themselves. Thoughts on this statement? Oh, 100%. I know that was a struggle. I grew up in a world where I learned very early on that self-deprecating humor was the best way to avoid getting beat up. Standing up for myself and even just recognizing the idea that I needed to, consider myself in a lot of these conversations. Just wasn't there. Are we all victims and can't make the changes we want to happen? No, I think yes, we are all victims. I absolutely believe that. And I would personally posit that the victimizer is the system that we live in. So the changes we want, I'll give you an example. People love to, when you talk about something like, treating people with humanity, or, being good to one another, and doing so through, for example, subsidized healthcare, things like that. The reaction is always, well, who's going to pay for it? And kind of a crap take. Who's going to pay for it shouldn't even be a question. And actually, I will probably ramble a little bit about sovereign currencies and things later. But so when you look at the way the system is currently stacked, and Biden's flapping his mouth about this right now, and about revising how the IRS works. The taxes they get are the taxes from poor people. Rich people have the opportunity and the luxury to hide money offshore, to use various loopholes and charitable donations and things like that to avoid paying taxes, and to get the majority of the money that they bring in. We love to talk about, like, we need to change that. We need to tighten up laws and focus on taxing the top 1%. But the top 1% are the ones that are paying for cool trips for politicians. So they're not motivated to fix this problem. How do we change the system? My honest answer is there's a few ways of doing it. There's violent revolution. I don't say that that's the right answer, but it's certainly an answer. But I do think that's a little bit of baby in bathwater kind of stuff. To me, I think changing the system involves putting the limits in place, like the limiting the amount of I hate to say it, but we just had the anniversary of the Occupy Wall Street movement. And a lot of the stuff that they were asking for at that time, which is still stuff people are asking for today, is how you fix that. You limit the amount of influence that the wealthy can have on politics. You limit the ability for politicians to, go into politics and then leave and go work for organizations that creating a conflict of interest. And you shore up those rules. I would love it if they made better decisions with regards to tax law to attack people, not attack, that's probably the wrong word, but to go after the money of the wealthy, because that's, money itself is a joke, but it's frustrating when, like, we're eking out an existence and we are being victimized by a system, and there's no solution unless there's actual systemic change. Congress approves $720 billion DoD funding bill with little debate. The $350 billion for people in recovery. Gee, perhaps that's not a good use of money. Yeah, man, DoD. America is a war hawk nation, and there's just no getting around the fact that they got a hard on for their weapons, and that's always gonna get the big money. The war in Afghanistan cost trillions of dollars, and that's a thing that, like, no one's gonna bat an eye. And then you go, hey, Americans, would you like to have subsidized healthcare? And they're like, hell no, or at least the leaders are like, hell no, and the hogs will ask the who's going to pay for it thing. We need people in government that don't suck, and don't suck, I mean the opposite of Anime Paul and Jagmeet Singh and Aaron O'Toole. Yeah, I would agree. As much as I like Jagmeet Singh, I don't know much about Anime Paul. She's the leader of the Green Party. Aaron O'Toole is a genuine monster. I like Jagmeet Singh, but I believe that is, essentially our leftist party, quote unquote, is really like just a liberal party. We need serious change, and we need people who are willing to make those change. DoD equals corporate security. Yep, absolutely. Department of Defense in the States is huge on protecting the status quo, and you know, going abroad to make sure that economic interests are protected. In terms of leaders, I almost don't know what to do in this regard, because like Bernie Sanders is a good example. When Bernie Sanders goes on Fox News or goes on the Joe Rogan show, and all of these people who are like fiercely opposed to everything that he would say, and then they listen to him and they're like, oh fuck, is this a socialism? Because, you know, supporting workers is actually good, and workers kind of want that. But it also shows, because the system is in a very real sense in the way of a guy like Bernie Sanders from succeeding. Bernie's fearless. He goes on Fox and destroys. Absolutely. And the thing about his appearances on Fox is he convinces Fox watchers that maybe he's not so insane. You know, maybe the trickle down thing ain't working for workers. Maybe it's the system is rigged, and you know, Bernie's the guy who's saying it. I'm not a Bernie bro, but I do love what Bernie Sanders has done with his political career. Same with Mike Gravel. I'm hoping the same for AOC, although I'm worried that you know, AOC might be faltering a little bit in the convictions. Will, you know, only time will tell. But I mean, remember, Kristen Sinema was once like a big cracker down at the Occupy Wall Street movement. She was a anarchist firebrand, and now the system got her. Right? That's one of my concerns. Anytime we talk about political leadership and what do we need, the whole system is structured to ensure that politics continues unabated, and that Wall Street, or you know, in Canada, you know, the financial markets and things continue as they always have been. So it's frustrating, because the systems corrupt, and then the corruption you know, takes away the voices that can actually make legitimate change. Like, you know, we talk about climate change, and climate change is, you know, it's going to be expensive to fix. But the problem that we keep doing is we keep looking at people like you and me and saying, you know, you need to, you know, turn your lights off at night. You need to drive less. You need to eat less meat. All of these things, all of which are true, and all of which will have an impact on things, but nothing compared to the actual villains in the climate game, which is industry and military. You know, the amount of CO2 emissions from military is ridiculous, and we're not going to question those things, because you got to have an army, right? And when we talk about making changes to save the planet, those changes are costly to industry, and they go, no. And our politicians go, oh, here's all my money. What? Sorry, no? Oh, okay, no. And that's how it goes. Access to money and power somehow makes people less hungry to make the hard choices to drive the change we all need. For sure. You know, I'll give you a good Canadian example. There was a young firebrand of a politician named Justin Trudeau. Boy, was he the dream of a positive future. He got elected talking about this important thing called voter reform, and it was to give people more of a voice in their government, and to make sure that government is more in line with what the people were asking for. And that went away because Justin Trudeau. You know, that's exactly the problem we have, is that the people who we put into positions that are capable of making these changes are suddenly in a scenario where their vested interest is to not make these changes, and to bow down a little bit. And you know, I think a lot of the times they feel like, you know, oh yeah, you know, we're doing things, we're doing all right, you know, we're listening, and then they're not. They're just stumbling forward and being led along by a money train. And that's why, every few years we have a corruption scandal in the government, and we kick out whichever current ruling class is and put in if it's liberal, we put in conservatives. If it's conservatives, we put in liberals. And the cycle begins anew. Hakuna Matata. It's all based on economic power. And that's not me being a class reductionist. There are real problems in the world that are not based on class. But economic power controls the future of all of us, and we're not in positions to actually impact that. Jack Layton, my man, Jack Layton. Good morning, YYC Live Music. I hope you're doing well, kiddo. Jack Layton. For younger viewers, Jack Layton was a vile socialist himself, the former leader of the NDP party, and just like a wonderful, wonderful human being who cared about those around him. I don't think he was by any stretch perfect, but he was the leader that we needed at the time, and we did not get. Jack's the letter that he wrote to Canadians when he was on his deathbed was just like one of the most touching things I've ever read, and even now when I think about it, get a little funny. So realistically, how do we fix things? We force some kind of change. How do we do that? I have no fucking idea. Because voting against our interests so far has not worked. Voting for our interests so far has not worked. I'm not anti-democratic. Well, I kind of am. I'm a libertarian socialist, and I do believe that at the end of the day, the government is shitty poop. But we're not in a place yet. I probably sound more like a sock dem when I talk, because I do think that we have to ease into it. If we just sort of tomorrow everybody was unionized and we're all working together for the greater good, I don't think that would solve our problems. I think it would just create new problems. That was an interesting little ramble there. What can I say? Us Gen Xers. I'll talk for a second about the sovereign currency thing, because I made a joke at the thing I was at last night, my friend's birthday barbecue. We were talking about the libertarians and their fierce love of we have to go back to the gold standard because sovereign currency doesn't have value. And it's true, sovereign currency doesn't have value. All money is fictitious and it's all silly garbage. But the value in the gold standard is based on the fact that we think those rocks are pretty and there's not enough of them. That's not even a thing. It's all value is imaginary, and in terms of buying and selling value, and it's funny to me. So all I can say is you're an uplifting, can-do positive possum Jim. Yes, I'm here to inspire the happies. Hopefully. Yeah, what it boils down to is I'm not the smartest man in the room. I'm not the smartest man if I'm alone in a room, I'm still not the smartest man in a room. And hopefully by talking about these kinds of things, other people may come up with answers. And maybe I'll accidentally stumble across some piece of brilliance while we're chatting here and revitalize the whole wide world. But more likely than not, that's probably swinging outside my strike zone, so who knows. But conversation's got to happen. Conversation's the thing for us to make some progress, because until we start actually confronting the reality of the problems that we're faced with, we're just jumping through the same hoops we always have. And that revolving door between liberals and conservatives is an example of that, because it's we could solve problems, or we could just not really understand them, and every time we get angry, just change the name of the leader, and that leader will be just as much a part of the problem. I do think that there is optimism to be had. I think that the election of people like AOC shows that there is a change afoot, especially in like in America. But here in Alberta, we elected an NDP government a couple years ago. Well, it's got kicked out since, but like that unheard of in my experience. Like we have been a conservative province for like, I think it was like 80 years that we had been, some different kind of conservative leadership over that entire time. And people made a change. And unfortunately, they made a change that was awesome. And being Albertans, we went, right, different is scary. Let's go back to the old ways. Because we don't have a good grasp of long-term vision. I think that's like an overall problem. I think the concept of long-term thinking is just not being pushed. It's a lot easier in our current society. When you're a business, you don't think long-term. You think shareholder value, and you think growth per quarter. When you're a politician, your whole focus is the next 4 years and getting elected again. And that, I think, is one of the problems that we face as a society, and that it's an easy one to fix, is to start encouraging strategic thought and encouraging people to look longer term in the future and to make longer plans than the next 4 years or the next quarter or whatever. And to a certain degree, business does that, but not as much as I think they should. 1905 to 1921, Alberta Liberal Party. Was it the Liberal Party? I did not know that. 1921 to 1935, UFA. 35 to 71 was the Socreds. And 71 to 2015, the Progressive Conservatives. 2015 to 19, the Alberta NDP. And of course, now we have the UCP. Jason Kenney's gift to the world. I didn't realize we'd actually had the Liberal Party, 1921. So the NDP were the more socialist decision we made recently, and that was in 2015. And prior to that, 1921 was the last time we had anything remotely, because I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the UFA they were kind of like the Socreds. They were socially conservative. They were progressive in the sense of it being a farming co-op, but they were not very progressive in terms of social standing or a lot of fiscal stuff. I think that it was like a workers' party of conservatives. I could be wrong. Again, I'm old, but I'm not that old, and I don't know the history of the United Farmers Party, but it would be interesting to look into. Why don't we take a look right now? I got a browser tab open. Let's find out a little bit about the UFA. I'm going to fade this over, and then we'll go not to that tab. That's a wrong tab. All right, go to Google and United Farmers of Alberta. So this is now they've essentially become the United Farmers of Alberta is essentially like a worker co-op. Party. So, the United Farmers of Canada was a radical farmers organization. It was established in 1928 as the United Farmers of Canada, Saskatchewan section, as a merger of the Farmers Union of Canada and the Saskatchewan. Am I looking at the right thing? I don't think I am. What was it in chat? Ideology, social democracy, progressivism, agrarianism. Okay. So, United Farmers, I'm just going to look for United Farmers of Alberta. Of Alberta Party. Okay. So UFA is an association of Alberta farmers that has served different roles in its 100-year history, lobby group, successful political party, and a farm supply retail chain. As a political party, it formed the government of Alberta from 21 to 35. Since 35, it's been primarily an agriculture supply co-op. So founded as a lobby group in 1909, following a merger between the Alberta Farmers Association and the Alberta branches of the Canadian Society for Equity. The UFA began as a nonpartisan organization whose aim was to be a lobby group promoting the interest of farmers in the province. In 1913, under President William John Tregellis, the UFA successfully pressured Alberta's Liberal government to organize the Alberta Farmers Cooperative Elevator Company, AFCEC, which joined with other prairie elevator companies to eventually become the United Grain Growers. Tregellis was the first president of the AFCEC. So entry into politics. Under pressure of losing influence to the upstart Alberta Non-Partisan League, which ran in 4 rural constituencies in the 1917 provincial election, winning 2, and dissatisfied with the existing political parties, UFA entered the political arena in 1919. Some prominent UFA members, including its president, Henry Wisewood, who there is a school named after, at first opposed entering into direct politics as opposed to lobbying, however, because they thought abandoning the UFA's nonpartisan policy would cause the UFA to break up. So let's just see if we can scooch down and see. That doesn't really talk about their policies here, which is strange. Yeah, it just talks about the history, doesn't talk about the actuals. Anyways, as United Farmers, that's the page I'm on, right? Yes. Okay. So yeah, we were saying basically they are ideological, they're social democrats, and they were progressive and agrarian. Okay, so a strange thing when you consider that it was an organization of farmers. Farmers should be very pro-union and pro-progressive values, because farming, especially in modern society, farming is a way of life that is under attack by capitalism. But farmers tend to be very conservative and very certain that if we just keep electing conservatives, eventually things will get better, which never fails. Never, ever, never. But with any luck, things will change. With any luck, when the NDP came to power, there was a real optimism. I was working for I wasn't working at the time, but I ended up working for the Alberta. It's a government agency, ASO, that supports the electrical grid. So essentially, if you have a power outage, it's their fault. And there was a real optimism. The NDP had put forward a lot of talk about alternative energy, which in Alberta is hippie commie talk, because we are an economy based on oil. We got lots of dead dinosaurs, and we can suck them up and make the money. And that historically has been sort of the foundation since the 70s, has been the foundation of Alberta's economy, or at least one of the major components of our economy. And talking about this is really, it's a funny thing, because Albertans recognize, even Albertan businesses recognize, that things like the Western Canadian Sedimentary Basin is getting depleted. Oil sands production is not as efficient as a lot of other forms of oil extraction. It presents a lot of problems, things like tailing ponds that are hugely problematic. Basically, a giant swimming pool full of arsenic that they then just cover in cement and pretend like it's not there, which never goes badly. And the amount of things like SAGD and other technologies that were implemented because the basin's getting harder and harder to get oil out of. So there is a short-term shelf life. Even if you rule out all of the climate change stuff, all of the everything else, and you just pretend like oil good forever, it's not going to be here forever. It's not a renewable resource, contrary to what some wackadoo people believe. And yes, they exist. They believe that oil is a gift from God and that God will always provide it. Okay. But yeah, the Western Canadian Sedimentary Basin is struggling and will run out. And then we will have no economy. So it's probably a good time to look into alternatives. And I on the concept of alternative energy, I'm hugely supportive of investing a lot of money into alternative energy and to a variety of technologies, not just solar, not just wind, but like, let's do a bunch of things. Let's do nuclear. I know everyone hates that, but it's actually a pretty doable form of energy production. And growing I'm not actually a big biofuel person, but I do believe in things like using hemp crops to instead of creating fuel, creating things like lubes and greases, which we still fucking need. And when we talk about solar power, we're not addressing the need for lubes and greases, which is actually like a huge. I worked for a company once, energy company, and they. I was working in that sector. I was working with their lube and grease plant. They have a tool that we were building called the cookbook, which was literally like a series of calculations that were all dynamic. Everything that if you were making a batch of this kind of grease, you need a recipe for that, but you also need that recipe to react to the fact that what was the last grease that you made or lube that you made or whatever. It's a hugely complicated process, and it was the most profitable from a percentage aspect of things. It was the most profitable part of this massive oil and gas company. It wasn't the most profitable when you look at like how much money comes in, but it was the most profitable in terms of, for every drop of oil goo, they get the most money doing this. There just isn't enough of a massive demand compared to cars and boats and things. But yeah, lubes and greases, super important. Need to have an alternative to those also. And we can do that with hemp. We can do that with corn. We can do that with any number of things. So like, I'm 100% cool with the idea of pivoting our economy and using the short-term need for oil and gas to fund retraining, fund investigation into alternative energies, fund all of this stuff so that we can just keep on having an economy. I don't like oil and gas, despite working in that sector. I think it's shitty garbage. But it's the shitty garbage that exists right now that people need to keep on eating. So that's a thing. But definitely, climate change is happening, and we have to do something radical and some major changes in not just the economy of Alberta, but in world consumption and in industrialization and all sorts of things. Like I think COVID has been fascinating for a bunch of things. One of the things I keep thinking about is all the empty towers downtown and how much energy is put into them having electricity and them having light and heat and all of these things, even in a regular time when they're being regularly used and there's lots of people in them. It's sort of taken for granted that you have to have a giant tower full of people, and it turns out that you don't. We've done a really good job of not working in offices for the last year plus, however long. I don't know how time works anymore because COVID, but we've worked from home, and that doesn't mean we're not using electricity. Like obviously there's lights on in my house, all that kind of stuff. I've got heat going, but these are all resources that pretty similarly would be the cost if I was working in an office. I'd still need to be heating my house while I'm not here. I'd still have electricity. I wouldn't be using it as much, but there's a difference. And we just sort of take it as written that, yeah, you have to have office towers. And then COVID came along, and people were like, well, why do we have to have office towers? I think that's going to be a major change, and I've talked about this a bunch. I think that what we need to do is start repatriating office towers and converting them into low-cost housing and services for homeless people, for poor people, and ultimately for pretty much everybody, right? I have no problem with rich people having a free home as long as everybody else has a free home. And if we can do that, you know, the whole housing of the homeless population and removing the whole housing stress on people, that's just good. That's just good. The number one cause of crime, in my opinion, is economic uncertainty. And if we can just take away that whole, like, where are you going to live tomorrow? Damn. Suddenly that's a huge anti-crime measure. Dirty socialism. I smell a socialism. It's true. I've been very cagey about the subject, but I am in fact a filthy socialist. Yeah. And I like being a small stream Andy in that regard, because I don't have people popping into my chat being like, let me tell you about the Frankfurt School. Which is cool, because, you know, in identifying me as a socialist, they're identifying themselves as fascists. Because the Frankfurt School, that's just a dog whistle. Know your fash. Coffee is good. I'm enjoying this coffee. Yeah. What else did I jot down that I was going to talk about? I kind of briefly mentioned the whole thing with... Oh, you know what's weird? Oh my god, I saw this the other day, and I didn't know this was a thing. Fucking John Hinckley Jr. is on YouTube. Now, younger people may be saying, who in the F is John Hinckley Jr.? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let me take you on a journey. A young John Hinckley Jr., feeling good about his life, feeling really, you know, cool, watched that movie Taxi Driver. Now, I know that's an old-timey movie, and a lot of you whippersnappers probably haven't seen it, but it's a great movie. Robert De Niro, as a young man, plays a guy who I would say very, very closely lines up with what Rorschach is in The Watchmen. And you know, a dangerous lone wolf kind of character. So Hinckley Jr. saw this movie and was like, oh my god, and he fell in love with Jodie Foster. Jodie Foster was in the movie, and she played a young sex worker. And it's weird because, like, you know, I'm old, but I'm not that old. And I remember Jodie Foster being, you know, like Silence of the Lambs was probably the first time I really, you know, that is Jodie Foster. And to watch Taxi Driver, like, she is super young. And the whole idea of her being a sex worker is meant to be deeply uncomfortable because of her age. So John Hinckley Jr. was like, she's pretty. I know how to win her love. I'm going to be just like De Niro's character in Taxi Driver. And he tried to kill Ronald Reagan, and he was a stalker for Jodie Foster. And he went to jail and was in jail for a long time, and now he's out and he's on YouTube. And that's interesting because, like, you know, he was found guilty by reason of insanity. And theoretically they believe that he is sane. I think he's, if I'm not mistaken, he's in a halfway house or something like that. And there are people who are paying attention to his YouTube content and stuff. And most of it is just like, he writes songs and he plays his songs, and he just, like, he's an old man now, right? He's not young. But yeah, like, YouTube being as toxic as it is, all of the, you know, I really enjoy this song, and when you tried to kill Reagan, I find that just really bizarre. Yeah, so John Hinckley Jr. is on YouTube. I am not subscribing, and I don't suggest you do either. I just find that weird, like, and it's like it's bound to happen. You know, people who do awful things get out of jail eventually, and the new world we live in is one where, like, YouTube can be a job. He's making a living on YouTube, as I understand things. I could be wrong about that, but weird. I used to live with a woman who was fantastic, and I love her to pieces, and she is still my best friend. Her cousin was murdered by a guy who was a repeat child molester, and he only murdered Kimmy because he made an oops. He saw her walking in the alley on her way to school. She was 5 or 6, and he was like, "Hey, come here, come into my house," and he had every intention on molesting her, and then realized that she was the first kid that he had brought home, and that she would know where he lived. And so instead of molesting her, he murdered her and hid her body in a garbage can. Obviously charged, found guilty, went to jail, long time, and now time has marched on, and I think he's still living in a halfway house, but he's like not in prison, and he is not fully supervised. And this thought is chilling. And yet it's, that's the system. He has paid for his crime in the system's eyes. And it's bizarre. And a lot of people will talk about, well, he's a pedophile, we should murder him. And I get your sentiment. Believe me, I do understand, but I don't really feel like state-sponsored murder is necessarily the appropriate answer. I would say we need to understand much better than we do, and that's the real value we could have out of people like this when we catch them, is to look at their brains, to look at their fMRIs, to look at their biochemistry, and try to understand what the fuck. Because what the fuck? It's a whole ugly topic. But he could be on YouTube. And there would be nothing illegal about him being on YouTube, unless he was, doing the things that got him in jail in the first place. But it's just a weird concept. It's a weird idea that this is the world we live in, that, people can be monsters, and now you can go on YouTube and you can be huge, which actually, when you think about it, isn't a surprise when you consider some of the people that are huge on YouTube are actual monsters. Speaking of monsters, Brett Kavanaugh got COVID, so that's good. Fingers crossed it's long-term debilitating or permanently murder-pating, because I don't like Brett Kavanaugh. He needs to not be a judge anymore, and clearly this is the inspired work of God, who I genuinely super 100% believe in. Trying to balance the Senate, or the Supreme Court appointments in the U.S. So, way to go, God, who I believe in 100%. All right, I think I'm going to take a pause. I'm going to jump outside and do that thing I do where I slowly kill myself with carcinogens. I will play some music, crappy homemade music that will be awful, and maybe I'll also play. Where's my fucking tab? Yeah, let's look for a Jack Layton speech, since we mentioned him earlier. And I'll just play some music while Jack talks. And hopefully it'll be inspiring. Where's a good long? You know what? Jack Layton's letter. I don't want to play that because I will get all tear jerky. All right, here's a 2011 election speak by Jack Layton. It will be, for those that are not Canadians that are watching, it will be partly in French. They will have someone speaking over him, doing the overdub. But that's Canada, baby. All right, here we go.
My friends, it's an historic night for New Democrats, and you should all take great pride in our achievement. But it's important to remember that tonight's result didn't come about in 35 days. It's been 50 years in the making. And I think of all millions of men and women who believe so passionately in a more fair society, and they refuse to give up. Often in the face of overwhelming odds, we stand on the shoulders of these giants. Your voices have been heard tonight. The success we've achieved, my friends, in this election belongs to you. My friends, we live in the greatest country in the world. It's a country that was built through hard work and determination and the rock-solid belief that if we stick together, there is no challenge we cannot overcome. It is the Canadian way, and tonight, Canadians voted to revive that spirit in Ottawa. Canadians voted out of hope for change, for a Canada where families come first and where no one is left behind. New Democrats will work to put that into action because although the election is ended, the work has just begun. This year, more than 25,000 Canadian men are going to be diagnosed with treatable prostate cancer. And I've recently learned that I'm one of them. I want to ensure that my constituents know that I will be carrying on as a Member of Parliament for Toronto Danforth and as leader of the New Democratic Party of Canada.
There he is, and here he is, Jack Layton, everyone. Say it to Jack. How are you, man? Good. Nice to see you. That was a stunning announcement when when that happened. Just take me through sort of what led up to that.
Well, in hearing your intro, I remembered when my dad and I went, when his doctor told him that he had prostate cancer, and it was that sort of whole world-changing sort of moment. In those days, of course, people didn't know much about treatment, and it was pretty scary. As it happens, and this is the good news, he passed on, but much later, and had had nothing to do with prostate cancer. So he'd beaten it, and I figure I've got his genes. So that bodes really well. And thank you, Tommy Douglas, for the Medicare system that we have. Well, I got a great healthcare team. I know you're partial to Tommy.
Yeah, we are partial to Tommy.
We're going to tackle it and use the best information that's available. And Olivia's got me reading up. Boy, she's got me reading up on diet. She's got me reading up on it. It turns out I've been doing a lot of things wrong in my life. All the things I liked, we're not really supposed to eat.
Yeah.
And let's just say my diet has changed rather dramatically just in the last little while. And feels good, feels healthy, good energy.
You talk about Olivia Chess. She's had her own battle with her health as well in the past, right?
Well, that was the other time when, her doctor informs us she's got thyroid cancer. I had noticed that she had a bit of a swelling in her neck. And I kind of wished I'd noticed earlier. Anyway, I noticed it and I said, maybe we better get that checked out. And sure enough, it was thyroid cancer. So surgery, radiation. She's now been cancer-free for 3 years. And if she can beat it, then I'm going to go out there and do the same thing, follow that path.
What do you do that? I mean, obviously, it becomes about you and your family, and it's an important moment. How do you then, you're the leader of a federal party. You made the decision to stay on and run. Not to run, stay on, and you may have to run again soon enough, who knows. But was there ever any doubt that you were going to stay as the leader of the NDP, or were you going to step down for a bit?
No doubt, because I'd watched my dad step down. Because in those days, you thought it was the end of the story. And I realized that if he'd stayed on working, he was a member of Parliament himself at the time, it would have been given him a better quality of life. He had so much more to give, and he found himself at home, kind of driving my mum nuts. And I wouldn't want to do that to anybody.
So even if you wanted to stay home, Olivia said no. Although she's there too.
Well, and we enjoy working together, and I think everybody says a lot of it has to do with attitude. And I do have to say, the outpouring of support has been amazing. And the people who come up to you and tell you their own story. Turns out I'm part of a pretty big fraternity here of guys that either are battling it or have beaten it or whatever the story is. So it all adds to a certain optimism, and I think all that good karma, those good vibrations, those prayers, all of those things are bound to have a really good effect. And my caucus is terrific. They're absolutely supporting me, so we'll just get on with the job.
You've always come across as a guy that's fearless. I remember you in municipal politics. You appeared to be fearless.
Riding a bike in downtown Toronto can do that.
Yes, it certainly can. Well, that also indicates.
Of course, I learned in Montreal. I learned in Montreal, so Toronto's pretty easygoing by comparison.
Are you fearless about this?
I think I've reached a point in my life where you can sort of stare death in the face. You know, I mean, it's going to come someday.
Yeah.
All right, I have returned.
My first grandchild.
Get rid of that.
That changes your worldview. It almost sort of frees you in a certain sense. Mm-hmm. And as one of my friends said to me,
that switched into an interview with George Strombopoulos. So that was neat and unexpected. I have returned. And my friends, love is better than anger, hope is better than fear, optimism is better than despair. So let us be loving, hopeful, and optimistic, and we'll change the world. All my very best, Jack Layton. Yes, that was the great letter that the message that he sent to Canadians when he was on his deathbed, and yeah, it was fucking beautiful. I am Canadian. If you're still on, thank you for watching. I love you. I hope you're doing well. All that kind of stuff. But I see that you had to go, and I don't think you're on anymore. So, screw you, buddy. There are a couple of new faces in the chat. I don't know if you're real people or bots. If you're real people, say hello. Hey, No Hope for the Nate. Hey, yo. Give No Hope for the Nate a follow if you're watching. He's a fantastic part of a fabulous music community in a nearby town to me. That's how I know Nate, and he's phenomenal. No Hope for the Lost is his current project, and it is so super good. So give him a follow. He also does a lot of like video game streams and metal vocal. What would you call that, Nate? Like where you do the thing where you sing the songs that are being played on the thing, and you do it really good. I don't know what you call that because I'm old and I don't fucking know anything. But yeah, Nate, give him a follow. Awesome human being and phenomenal musician. Also runs a music studio in the greater covers, I think. Shut up. That's actually probably the right word for it. Vocal covers. That's what you even call it. Shit. Impersonations maybe. Haha, I don't know. Yeah, well, you know, I've been guilty of that a time or two. I do my weekly humiliations on this channel where at the end of my stream I sing karaoke badly. Or hopefully not badly. Hopefully it's like so good and somewhere watching right now is like a person from an A&R company who's going to be like, "Oh my god, we need to sign this guy to a massive the Nickelback week." That was a good week. It was a terrible week, but it was a good week. That actually came entirely from a girl that I don't know if I'd say I was dating. We were kind of exploring the idea of dating, and that didn't end up happening. And I say that because essentially that person was. So I'm not monogamous. I don't do the monogamy thing. I am a firm believer in ethical non-monogamy, and I am in fact solo poly is the term for it. And this was a person who was exploring their own polyamory, and it was just sort of the wrong time and the wrong thing for them. So we parted ways with no nastiness or anything like that. And that's how the world should be. It was actually like, as breakups go, it was pretty fucking awesome because we both were like, yeah, no, I get it. If you're not there, you're not there. Yeah, it was a cool experience. So let's see. We talked about how John Hinckley Jr. is on YouTube and how fucking weird that is. One of the things that's been sort of gnawing at my brain for quite a long time is protest movements And I'm a big believer in protest movements. Even if I don't believe in what you're protesting, I believe that our society is one that allows you the right to protest. So as frustrating as it is when the Nazis go marching through town, I do believe they have the right. I also believe they should be met with a much louder and angrier crowd that can tell them to fuck right off in no uncertain terms. But it's the catch-22 of free speech, right? I'm not a free speech absolutist. I don't believe that anyone has the right to say the shit that they say. I think that they need to suffer for their sins. But it's a thing. Anyways, protest movements are like there's a lot of protest happening right now, and we tend to demonize some and revere others. And it's the weirdest thing how that works, isn't it? It's almost as if the status quo protection is important to the system. So when a group like Black Lives Matter protests, no matter what they are protesting, they are villainous monsters. And we hate them and we rage against them. And then when horrible quote-unquote patriots protest, well, they're just exercising their free speech, and that's a wonderful, wonderful gift of democracy. I see that in a very, very negative light. I find that, like, again, people have the right to protest, but the demonization of the other side, which I'm doing right now, I know that, it's problematic. When you consider something like Black Lives Matter, which the whole point of it is just to say, hey, black people are people, and they deserve the same protections, rights, and freedoms as others. And when those things that are quote-unquote protections are actually agencies that have a long and storied history of violence to them, that's not good, and we need to fix that. That should be something that we hear and we're like, yeah, fuck yeah, absolutely. And when someone says, well, I want to march around and raise awareness to the fact that Fauci, blah, 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 vaccines bad, lick each other in the face, we should be able to look at that and go, wow, you're monstrous. They're very different. And yet we tend to really be okay with the horrible side of things and not with the more positive and progressive side of things. I guess that's probably because we don't live in a particularly progressive time, or more accurately, we do live in a progressive time. We're just trying really hard not to, which is horrible and gross. It's easy to look at something like Black Lives Matter and go, fires. Sure, there were fires set. The vast majority of those protests were totally peaceful, but there were fires set. Let's look at the other side and go, well, what have they done? Well, their protests generally are violent, and super spreaders of a global pandemic. That might be a thing. We might want to care about that. That's probably just as important as a few fires. But no, we see Black Lives Matter as a violent group, and we see the patriots as genteel souls out there trying to make the world a better place, one ivermectin paste tube at a time. And I know you don't have to eat horse paste to use ivermectin, but I just found it really funny when people were screaming about how the FDA hasn't approved the toxic vaccine, and then they go, but horse paste, that's a thing I should do. Is it? Because I feel like it's not. I feel like if you're really that focused on actual valid science to promote the thing that you're doing, then maybe horse paste isn't your best look. since there's none. Yeah, anyways, people are weird. So I do find it really strange that that we associate, like Indigenous protests. Right now, there's Indigenous people in BC that are trying to protect waterways, trying to protect all kinds of things, and the same people who scream about their right to protest and their right to organize and their right to march through town during a pandemic without masks on, licking each other in the nose. That's fine, but when Indigenous people are like, maybe you could stop raping the environment for a moment, well, that's just evil, and we need to do something about that. I find that really fucking weird. I won't pretend that any protest movement doesn't have its ugly sides, but when your protest movement is an ugly side, that's not good. That's a bad thing. Bad. I don't know. I feel like capitalism is essentially failing us in by and large, and it's kind of scary. Like I'm a socialist, and I'm not a fan of capitalism, but this is the world I live in, and the failing of capitalism is, it's bad. What could happen is a lot of bad things. So we need to start paying attention. And I recognize that the groups that I'm talking about, the patriots and the whatnot, are in the minority and very in the minority. But I live in a place called Alberta, which is historically a very conservative town. And it's funny because it's conservative against our better instincts and against our better we vote conservative, and that's against our interests. A lot of people that live here are not wealthy, are not the 1%, and a vote for the Conservatives is a vote for the continued monopoly of industry. So when Black Lives Matter protests, most of Alberta is like, oh, well, I read on the internet that this is a terrorist group. And then when the Proud Boys show up in support of a street preacher who is regularly being arrested for being a shitty human being, they're like, yeah, but he's got the right to protest. You should hear him out. He's a good Christian man, and those boys standing with him, who we have decided are terrorists, that's a thing. Yeah, capitalism is a dying system, and I think it's because, I've thought about this a lot, and that we talk about the invisible hand, which I always get wrong. I always think of the invisible hand as the thing that is designed to protect the people who are essentially exploited by capitalism, and that because I don't remember for the life of me what Adam Smith called that, but it's not the same as the invisible hand. The invisible hand is market forces which ensure that we are always in a happy balance and that everyone does well, and that Smurfs are blue and things. One moment, allow me to provide nicotine to a underage boy. Smoke up, Johnny. That was a reference to the movie The Breakfast Club. Proof that I am in fact old. So yeah, when we talk about the invisible hand, what we're actually talking about is this thing that controls the market and market forces that ensure that balance of supply and demand and things. And that's all neat, but also total bullshit. Because capitalism at its core is not about balance. It's not about making sure that supply and demand are kept in balance it's about profit. It's purely about profit. And in a small scale, on a small timeline, absolutely, supply and demand, incredibly important. But they're not like global absolutes. And this is a thing. When companies develop a certain amount of size and power, they control supply and demand, or at least they have a better handle on it, and certainly can exploit supply and demand better than you or I can. And exploitation is ultimately the root of capitalism. That probably sounds like a stupid commie thing to say, and it is, but it's a valid statement. At the very core, when we talk about how capitalism works, it is based on the extraction of value from resources, from workers, from everybody else, and that money goes to the entrepreneur or whatever that is the boss of that company or that thing or whatever. Somebody's making money, and there is nothing wrong with that inherently. The problem is that without effective controls, bad things happen. This is the whole reason why there was the New Deal in the US, which was a massive change in American politics. Oh, itchy back. Sorry, I have to scratch the back real quick. And it's in one of those awkward spots. Oh, that's good. There's probably that's probably gonna get clipped, and there's some like weird internet group that's like, oh, he's scratching his back. He likes it, doesn't he? I'll be on some weird clip thing. Anyways, capitalism doesn't factor in kindness. It doesn't factor in long-term thinking. It doesn't factor in compassion. It doesn't factor in the long-term access to dying resources like oil and gas. Instead, what it does is it focuses on shareholder value. The best example of this was the whole Enron debacle. Enron made a company policy that they would grow 10% per quarter. I think it was per quarter. That is an unsustainable metric. And it's funny that people who run a company would think that let's make an unsustainable metric our bottom line, because that's not possible. If you grow 10% every quarter, every whatever, eventually you will become larger than the known universe, and that might be problematic. And what ended up happening is they had to make it work. They had to work within the boundaries of 10% growth, and so they did. They did by doing things like rolling brownouts in areas where they just would stop doing electricity and then start it up again and be like, oh yeah, the system, we're making money now. They would do crazy stuff with like shell companies and buying and selling companies, and essentially they did a real nasty to the economy. And it was all so that on paper shareholders could look at it and go, look, we're growing 10% per month or per quarter. Ain't that just the best darn thing ever? It was not. And it led to a massive economic collapse. And Enron gets pointed to, but they were not the only ones. There was a particular accounting company who I believe were Arthur Anderson Accountants or something like that. I could be wrong entirely about the name of the company, but there was this firm, and they also represented groups like WorldCom that went through the exact same thing. I was working at the time for a company called Pan Canadian that had a Houston outfit that was doing the exact same thing. This was not just Enron. This was like, hey, Enron is being successful, let's follow suit. And inevitable collapse of a variety of companies, damage to people's retirement savings, all kinds of stuff. Because capitalism is not designed to give fuck number one. when we talk about like, what, so I'm gonna go out on a limb here and talk about here in Canada we have a project called the Trans Mountain Pipeline, and it is a contentious project, and one that I actually do support, and a lot of people will be sniffy about that, and I get why, but hear me out on this. So Trans Mountain was owned by a company called Kinder Morgan, and Kinder Morgan was, it's an American company, a massive company. They do pipelines, and they wanted to do this pipeline through to basically twin the existing pipeline so that they can get more oil and gas to Tidewater. Now, from a Canadian perspective, we are funny about oil and gas. We want it, we use it, we demand it, but we don't like the fact that it exists. And this can be seen in things like the Quebec, which is another province of Canada, for those that aren't familiar. Quebec refuses to have pipelines going, through Quebec, but yet they want oil. I'm not pretending like, fuck those people, let's turn off the taps or anything like that. I get why they don't want pipelines. I get all that stuff. Pipelines are not perfect. Pipeline technology has come a long way. Leak detection has become a very, very important part of pipelines, and pipelines are, I think it is fair to say, demonstrably safer ways to move oil and gas than traditional methods of shipping tankers and rail and all of this stuff. The rail industry is fucking terrible in terms of like actual what they get away with. If you dig into the rules around the rail industry, like, we shouldn't be doing any moving stuff by rail. It's so problematic. One of the beliefs of what caused the massive fire in BC that like wiped out towns this past summer was rail. It was so hot and dry that as a railway car was driving through, that's basically shooting out sparks onto dry grass. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what happens when you shoot sparks onto dry grass, but you get big fires. Especially in remote areas where someone's not there to go, oh crap, a little fire. Let's throw a little bucket of water on that and make it all go away. Anyways, my understanding is Kinder Morgan did not properly engage with the people whose land they wanted to go through, which I do not support and endorse. I think that it's very important that you have buy-in, especially when we're talking about Indigenous land, because Indigenous people are awesome and they're land protectors and they actually care about what we're doing with land. And when honkies talk about it, we're really only caring about what it does to our property value. These are facts. Anyways, Kinder Morgan was trying to get this approved. They went to the National Energy Board, l'Office National de l'Énergie, and they were rejected a few times, mostly because of the issue of consultation. And ultimately, Kinder Morgan said, fuck this. We're going to close things, period. And the Canadian government, the Liberal government run by Justin Trudeau, said, hey, wait, let's buy this from you. So they bought Trans Mountain Pipeline. And there has been a huge amount of engagement with Indigenous communities and stuff. The project is going ahead, blah, 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 blah. The Canadian government owns it. The general understanding is that there's a desire to sell it. And there's been various conversations about, like, maybe we can sell it to Indigenous groups so that they're receiving the financial benefit of the impact to their territory, things like that. Those are all well and good. I personally, and this was the whole point of what I was getting at, I personally think the buying of the pipeline was an extremely good idea, and we shouldn't be selling it. Or if we want to sell it to Indigenous groups, we say, okay, we're going to sell a portion, and the Canadian government will continue to have a portion. And the profit from this thing should be used to pivot that economy. I mentioned earlier, we were talking about the need to get off of oil and gas. Well, yeah, oil and gas ain't going anywhere unless we make it go somewhere, or unless it runs out, which it will eventually. And we need to be prepared for that. So this is a fine vehicle by which we can take that sweet, sweet money we're bringing in and use it to bolster the local economies and bolster, like, you know, in Alberta, we're an oil and gas place. So let's do a lot of retraining, because there's a lot of alternative energy we could be doing that has similar kinds of job stuffs. So let's teach people how to do those in a way that allows us to get off of the existing oil and gas based energy economy, and then ultimately look to getting rid of that pipeline in the short term, right? Short probably isn't the right term, but, you know, like getting off of the need for oil and gas and making it so that we have an economy that thrives without it. Because honestly, we don't need to bleed the fucking system dry. We just need to get off of it. Everybody knows oil bad. But pulling the trigger is difficult. So I would say, as a socialist, repatriating these kinds of things is a good idea. When we give giant sums of money to oil companies to keep them afloat so that they trickle down economics can totally work every time, we should be taking a portion of ownership of those companies and leveraging them as part of the government. Now people will argue, you know, oh, communism bad, all that kind of stuff, and I do agree. I'm not a communist. I am a socialist. But when it really boils down to is those industries are more and more automating. All industries are more and more automating, and there will come a point where I don't think we'll have jobs for people, because everything will be automated. We'll have jobs, but they won't be like, there won't be anywhere near as many jobs and anywhere near as much opportunity for people because of automation. And we can continue to be in this situation where all of the automation is being done by wealthy 1% people who just get all of the rewards and stop having to pay people more and more. Or we can repatriate that shit and be like, okay, the money that this corporation was making is now government money, and that government money can be used to ensure that people have a good quality of life, even if they are not working. The ridiculous future we always talk about is like everything is automated, everything is done. Like, why the fuck was George Jetson going to a widget factory? What the fuck was that about? George Jetson would go to the widget factory. Cogswell Cogs, I think, was the company that he worked for, and they made cogs for automation systems. And his job was just to push a button every now and then, and he would complain about his sore button pushing finger and stuff. That is dumb. Obviously, we shouldn't be looking for future-based predictions from a 1950s Hanna-Barbera cartoon, but we view that at some point the world of automation is going to, you know, make it so that we don't have to work anymore. And isn't that a lovely, wonderful thing? Blah, 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 blah. Well, only if our society is functioning in such a way that people are still looked after. Because turns out that won't be the case if Jeff Bezos is the one who makes all of the decisions in the world, oddly enough. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but Jim, Jeff Bezos, he has my best interests at heart. I assure you, he does not. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of the people at the top of the money piles that is our current system don't give a fuck about me, right? If they could come up with a way to automate my job, they would. And then they would say, well, Jim, you had a good run. You were a fine business analyst, but that job doesn't exist anymore. So do something else or don't. I don't care. It's not my problem. And that's true from a capitalism perspective. If I am not bringing value, then I am not a part of the equation that they need to factor in and can remove me. The gig economy is especially good at this because workers have no rights. I have been a consultant for my pretty much my entire career, which is long. And companies, people talk about like severance packages. I don't see those. I would not see those. A company can cancel my contract with like almost impunity. And I have no legal recourse because I don't count. I'm not an employee. Employees get benefits. I don't get benefits. Employees get statutory pay. I don't get statutory pay. And employees get laid off money. I don't get laid off money. The gig economy is like, in my mind, it is the last gasp of capitalism, and this is where bad things are going to happen. Now, I was in an Uber yesterday, and I was thinking about this because Uber is an example of the gig economy, and I was like thinking about it, going like, Uber as a corporation is adequately terrible, but very typical of these things. I have been nothing but a gig worker. I remember at one point I was essentially an adjunct professor. I was teaching college. I wasn't considered a professor, and shouldn't have been, because I do not have, in order to be a professor, I think you have to have at least a master's degree, if not a doctorate. I have a bachelor's degree. They offered to help me get a master's degree, but there were a lot of strings attached that I did not want, so I did not take them up on that, even though it would have been free. And I was working 2 different full-time jobs at the time, so add full-time study, no. But yeah, so I've been a gig worker my whole life. I have no power over the direction of my career ultimately, and that's the Uber guys in the same boat, and that the adjunct professor who is someone with a master's or a doctorate who is making like sweet fuck all to teach university level courses, in hopes that one day maybe they'll get into the appropriate in group to eventually become a tenured person. This system is not going to be there for you. All of these things matter, and fuck, I don't even know. I'm just rambling, but I'm rambling. All these things matter, and all these things are problems, and more those people at the top are taking advantage of these things, like the recent was it Frito-Lay, or I think it was Frito-Lay or Nabisco, or I'm not sure which, but one of them, one of those recent strikes, the company had come back with hey, listen, times are really tough with us making literally like 4 times as much as we make in a typical year in the first quarter of 2021 because COVID. I think it was Frito-Lay. But yeah, they're making shit cans of money, and they're like, times are tough. We can't just like give you the money. We have to use it for us. And one of the things they came to the negotiating table with regards to the contract of their union workers was, how about we make a new contract, doesn't apply to you, it applies to any new hires. We give them shittier benefits. We give them, less of the amazing things that we give you, which of course were not amazing. And like this to them felt like a viable thing. We're making record profits, and we just want to like screw employees more, because we like making record profits, and it's poggers, as the kids would say. So let's do that, and let's do that in the most unethical of ways. Companies don't give a fuck, and their very definition of like a corporation is should not give a fuck, should only worry about getting that sweet, sweet money. So yeah, we brought in the New Deal. We brought in the idea of making it so that companies were required to protect people, and that government would step in and ensure that people were protected through social programming, which was absolutely radical talk back then. The idea that, poor people actually just shouldn't die, radical. We were a good Christian nation back then, so Christianity always been a big fan of just letting the poor die. That's what Jesus said. Let the little children come unto me, and I can sell them into slavery and make a sweet, sweet profit. That may not be in the New Testament. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, it's just a thing. The New Deal came along, and we learned to start, forcing care. Not just we learned how to care, but we learned how to say, we care, and we're going to devote a certain amount of money in that. When I went for my little break there, I was playing the conversation with Jack Layton, and he mentioned Tommy Douglas. Tommy Douglas was a Saskatchewan politician from the New Democrat Party who was the reason that Canadians have universal health care. And you are damn skippy that was a revolutionary idea at the time. Giving people something for free is a communism, and we hates that. But Canadians will tell you it's pretty fucking awesome to not have. I really think fear on an individual level is the most dangerous thing. It's the thing that leads to crimes. I mentioned this a few minutes ago when we were talking about housing prices and repatriating, because that's my word for the day. Repatriating office towers to make housing and services for people who are homeless or low income or battling with whatever. When we react poorly, it is because of fear. And I suddenly immediately feel like Patrick Swayze and Donnie Darko going, fear, love, fear, love. That's not what I'm talking about. The fear that comes from not knowing how you're going to make your rent, not knowing if you're going to wind up on the street, mortgage payment, whatever you want to that's so palpable right now because of the eviction crisis that we're facing, and landlords who are equally afraid, stupidly in my opinion, because they're like, hey, I'm going to lose all of my investment in these houses, which just sucks for me, and therefore it's not fair, so someone has to protect me, but not the people I want to throw out on the street. Fear is a really bad motivator, and it causes spikes in crime. COVID has made us afraid, and has caused, I don't know that I'd say it's caused a spike in crime, because I don't think that's an accurate statement, at least today, but it has certainly caused a spike in violent tension between groups, between those that's on board and those that's ain't. The things that we should be doing as a society to fix our problems should be around fixing that fear. So in the US, where you don't have universal health care, have universal health care, so that people aren't thinking like, oh no, if I break my leg, I could become bankrupt. Hey Bender, how you doing, my friend? I've just been rambling for like I've been rambling for 2 hours, but I was rambling for about an hour here about various stuff. Anyways, yeah, take away that fear, and all of a sudden, people do better. When you take away the fear of losing your home, when you take away the fear of having enough to eat, all of a sudden things get better for people, and that's good. Crime goes down, addiction problems go down, and yeah, there's a definite relationship between fear and addiction. I don't know why this is hard for people to comprehend, but fear, we self-medicate fear. Doing good, just packing and getting ready for tomorrow, haha, but ramble away, amigo. Oh, I absolutely will. And yeah, like I said, I'm more than happy to give you a hand tomorrow, buddy. Just let me know. I think you said you would come pick me up or something, and I'm good with that, because I got big arms, but I don't got a car. So the New Deal and things like that, the end result was a reduction in fear, and the stability of things like the crime rate, and the lowering of the crime rate. Crime rate's gone down historically for a very long time, and partly it has to do with that, the reduction in fear. It also has to do with things like not having lead-based paint, so that we're not constantly suffering from heavy metal poisoning and reacting in a fight or flight sort of fashion, which is a thing. But shit, I don't even know where I was going with that. So it's funny because I've been a bit of a doomer today, but all of the things that I'm doomery about are things that we should be fixing, and I don't know how to fix them. I'm not Johnny Politic. I'm certainly not the guy who can come up with a viable means to improve the world with, taxing the rich or whatever. That's the answer, for the record. As long as we have this ridiculous idea that money has value and that some people get to have more of it than others, we'll be in this situation. And I don't know, again, like, money has no value, but we have to have it have a value, because that's how we do. If you are a chicken farmer and there's no concept of money, why would you give away one of your chickens? Realistically, kindness, like if there's somebody that's hungry and you can feed them with an egg or a chicken, you would do that. Babble. Anyways, I'm gonna move on topic wise. Let's see. When I come back, I want to talk about the fluoridation debate, and I want to do a little digging into it, because I know what I think, but I don't know, 100%. Let's talk a little bit about something called new relationship energy. Pardon me. New relationship energy is a funny thing, and we all know it. We all lived it. We've all enjoyed it. When you have a new relationship and you get all like googly headed, and there's studies that say that new relationships are essentially like being on cocaine for about six months, give or take, and then all of a sudden you're not on the cocaine anymore. New relationship energy is an interesting thing, and I was thinking about it earlier today, because I seem to be broken and have less of that than some people. That hasn't always been the case, but that is the case these days. When I get in a new relationship, I'm very like, yeah, cool, I'm in a new relationship, and it's fun, and there's a certain amount of yeah, but I don't have the cocaine reaction. And so when new relationships fail, it's like, oh, okay, that's cool, I get it, have a good one. But a lot of people, I think, don't understand new relationship energy. That's, I think, why most people get like married within the first 6 months of, or at least start down the path of marriage within that 6 months of getting together, and they're just sort of blinded by this wicked positive feeling that they get, and they're like, oh my God, nothing could be wrong. I totally love all of the things about the person, and then that fades and the reality comes in, and you're like, oh, you're crappy. You're one of those seat up people. Whatever the case may be. I think it's important that we understand it, and it's funny because I never got it until I started exploring the whole ethical non-monogamy thing, because non-monogamy people tend to really be fixated on talking about stuff, and figuring stuff out, communication in relationships, boundaries, things like that I don't think are commonplace in the really real world. And it's not because ethical non-monogamy is in some way, morally superior or intellectually superior or anything like that. It's just that there's a lot of peril in the world of ethical non-monogamy that you have to navigate. And so the conversations happen. New relationship energy can be very blinding, and it can be very, very frustrating. So for example, if you're in a relationship with somebody and you have all of those great feels and they don't have the same feels, and they end the relationship, and then you there's anger and bitterness that come because you were all coked out and now you are not coked out and you feel bad about it. And we don't understand because it's not a conversation we have. It's not a thing that we think about. So we end up being miserable and not necessarily for real reasons. It's kind of a goofy thing. My most recent breakup was a girl texted me while I was streaming and was like, yeah, listen, this is not the right time for me. I appreciate it. And my reaction was, no, fair. I get it. Good luck. Yeah, happy to be a pal, and limit the thing to just friendship. And I think that's normal and healthy. But a lot of the time when people are in these new relationships and the relationship ends, there's anger and there's bitterness, and it's for want of a better comparison, it's like coming off of drugs and not having access to, not coming off in the sense of like, I don't have the drugs so I can't be on the drugs anymore, but coming off in the sense of like, somehow I am being prevented. Ooh, topless young man, hot damn. My eldest son just was grabbing a towel and he didn't have a shirt on, and I think it's important that I humiliate him whenever possible. I think if we understand these things better, and we understand that a lot of, at the beginning of a relationship, things are so fucking cool, and a lot of that is just biochemistry, and it's not based on the other person actively being like good for us or bad for us or whatever, or being that perfect match. And it's really just about our bodies enjoy the fact that we're dating somebody, and that we find there's this new person who we're super interested in, who sometimes touches our willy bits, and we're like, oh wow, and they say interesting things and they do interesting stuff, and I am completely just nothing wrong with that, but we need to understand it, because otherwise we mistake the good feelings we have that are entirely biochemical for good feelings we have that are exclusively the result of knowing this person as we do. And that is bad and danger and not awesome. So we should definitely avoid making that mistake, because that will end. New relationship energy does not last. And whether it's 6 months or 5 years or whatever, or 2 weeks or whatever it is, it will go away, and then you're left with the reality of the person. And it's way, way important to do your best to see the reality of the person when it's all starting. We have this ridiculous thing about like marriage and building a life together and all that stuff, and the sanctity of all of that. And I'm not poo-pooing marriage. I'm not saying that like, oh, never get married and only have meaningless sex in the face of our brave new world. And yes, that's an Aldous Huxley reference. I'm just saying that if we think of the cocaine rush that is new relationship energy as being the result of this other person. And we get, deeply committed and invested. And then when that goes away, there's this sense of like betrayal, like they have changed. Things are different. And that ain't the way. To me, it's the same as like when people get married versus being like living together, for example. You're living together with a person and yeah, they leave the toilet seat up or they, don't do the dishes or whatever. But like that's whatever. It's just their quirk. And then you get married and that little switch in the back of your head that turns and says, now you are my spouse. Well, all of the shit that we have in our brains this is what a spouse does suddenly applies. And we don't know why all of a sudden we're angry about the fact that they're not doing the dishes, or we're angry about the fact that we're, constantly falling into the toilet because the seat is up, or, whatever the case may be. And we look at that as like, this is their fault, when in fact, they always did the same thing. We're just viewing them differently. So, yeah, new relationship energy works the same way. If you always think that you're going to have this wonderful feeling every time you see them, you won't. It's better to understand who they are and why they are and how they are, and have a real decision in your head of whether or not this is a compatible thing. I'm not saying, like, for me, I don't think I'm compatible with humans. I'm just a weird motherfucker. But other people, yeah, I believe people can have happy, long-term, monogamous, joy-filled lives together. I would never say no. For me, I struggle with the idea that that's an option, because I feel like it's a lot to put on one person to be my alpha and omega. And this was sort of the thing that led me down this road, was the idea that it is unfair to put all of my expectations for what I want in life on another human being, and that, like that is a setup for failure. And so I looked at that immediately as, okay, well, I need to be comfortable in my own skin. I need to be comfortable with my own thoughts. I need to be able to have my own success. I need to be able to have my own independent life. And that is something I've striven for. Stribulated? I don't know. Whatever the word is. I have worked towards having a full and complete life. And I am not there. But it's, it's an actively ongoing thing, and it's good. And the idea, like my idea of a romantic relationship evolved greatly as a part of that, because I don't need someone to be my alpha and omega, or the yin to my yang, or I guess realistically the yang to my yin. I think I don't even know. I don't remember which one is the boy parts and which one is the girl parts, and clearly I could have someone who was the yang to my yang, or the yin to my yin, or whatever the fuck. Like, none of those things should matter. What should matter is, do I enjoy the person? Do I have chemistry and a romantic attachment to them? And cool, then we can do all those things. I don't know. I'm kind of rambly right now. I think it's time for me to take another pause. Oh, hey, Bander. And once you understand all of that, in my opinion, it can ensure you still have that butterfly feelings the entirety of the relationship. You just can't take it for granted, but you're 100% correct with your train of thought. You have to understand the person and realize that honeymoon phase does end. Sorry, I'm having a hard time formulating my thoughts on this due to almost jaded view on the situation. I understand your view on the situation, my brother. I know the story of Bender, and yeah, no, I get that. I'd say you did a good job of formulating your opinion, or of formulating your thoughts on that. And I honestly, I think that honest view of the other person is like a real service to us. So if I meet someone and I'm buzzing on the coke feels, and I'm like, oh my God, they're so wonderful and stuff, I could be setting myself up for like a serious letdown. It's way better to understand, enjoy the feelings and stuff, but understand them for what they are. And then, be able to look at the person and be like, is there the right chemistries? Is this a thing that will bring me joy? So yeah, no, I'm with you, buddy. I'm with you. I totally get, given your circumstance, I do get your jaded view. I have gone through the jaded view myself for very different reasons. I've gone through some long-term relationships that ended poorly. You smelt what I stepped in. Exactly. And I have gone through the bitter and the jaded as a result and come out the other side. And a lot of that was the working on me parts, which, can't stress enough. Therapy's awesome. Anyways, yes, now I am going to put on, I'll see if I can find another Jack Layton speech, because that was good. But not the interview with George Strombopoulos, because that was less good. We'll play this one, and hopefully it's good, and then I will go and do the break thing. So here we go.
And joining us now is Jack Layton, the leader of Canada's New Democratic Party, and we welcome you back to TVO. It's good to have you here.
Great to be here.
Well, let's get this debate issue out of the way. Initially, we were told you and the Prime Minister were opposed to having the Greens participate in the debate. Now you appear to have had a second thought. How come?
Well, there were some concerns, but what was beginning to happen was the debate about the debate was becoming a real distraction from the issues that should be debated. And I want to debate the Prime Minister because I want to replace him on his job. I don't think he's doing the right thing for the country. And so I simply said, look, my only condition is that Stephen Harper be in the room so I can debate him, and it doesn't matter to me who else is there.
He's had a change of heart as well, and it looks like this will all happen. Do you worry that she will outshine? I mean, that was part of the concern I think other party members had, was that she's pretty larger than life, and she might outshine the rest of you. You concerned about that?
Hey, she's an effective debater. I'm running for Prime Minister. She's supporting Stéphane Dion for Prime Minister, according to what she said up till now. I don't agree with her on that. I think that we actually need a change from the last 25 years that we've seen in this country of alternating parties back and forth. And I'm offering really something quite different this time around for Canadians to choose, which is a Prime Minister who's actually going to put them first every day in the House of Commons.
Does this suggest then that the Greens are here to stay? They're an official, recognized major political party in the country as far as you're concerned?
Well, I think the debate certainly about environmental issues is here to stay, and there are many parties that will come forward with their ideas. I happen to think that the record of New Democrats for standing up for the environment is extremely strong. It was in 1983 that a New Democrat stood up in the House of Commons and started talking about global warming, and we've been bringing forward very practical, very doable solutions on those key issues ever since. And I'm glad that Canadians want all parties to address that critical issue.
You are, if I may say, campaigning quite differently this time, with a different strategy from the last couple of times. Let's show a snippet of your ad. Go ahead, Michael, roll tape.
Stephen Harper is a strong leader, with the strength to brag about billions in corporate tax cuts, while 1 in 8 children lives in poverty. Strong enough to ignore nearly 5 million Canadians who can't find a family doctor. And destroying the environment while you pay record high gas prices? Strong leadership. We need a new kind of strong.
The new strong is about fighting for what's right for you. I'm Jack Layton of the New Democrats.
What does that mean, your kind of strong, a new kind of strong?
Well, I think that we've seen Stephen Harper portrayed as someone who takes decisive decisions. He's strong on the issues, but as one friend said to me, the worst kind of strong is when you're wrong. And I think he's out of sync with the values of the average Canadian family when it comes to things like looking after one another, our healthcare system. The New Democrats brought us something called Medicare, where we say If you're sick, we're all going to help look after you.
So your definition of strong differs from his in what way?
Well, I think what we're talking about is a more compassionate Canada, a competitive one, but one that doesn't let people just simply sink or swim. One that is a voice for peace in the world. That often takes a lot of strength to speak up against conflict and violence, and we're offering that kind of strong. That's what the Democrats have always stood for.
NDP leaders, both in this province and federally, have almost never run to say, I want to be premier, I want to be prime minister. They always say, we want to do well, we want to get a lot of seats. You're running this time saying, I want Harper's job, I want to be prime minister. Why the change in tack?
Well, because I think the country needs a change in tack. We've seen the old parties going back and forth and never really very much change when it comes to policies. They promise all kinds of things in elections and try to portray themselves as being different. But what I've noticed is that when the boardroom tables call from Bay Street, either one of those parties has snapped to attention, and they've had huge corporate tax cuts as a result. But meanwhile, families who are played to in elections as though they're an audience that maybe you can seduce are left behind. And that's why even the broad middle class in Canada right now is feeling completely squeezed. They're very worried about their future, increasingly so. And I believe that in the House of Commons and around the cabinet table, those issues of the kitchen table should be front and center. And whether it's the economy, healthcare, the environment, those are the questions that a Prime Minister, Jack Layton, would make sure was at the center of a cabinet discussion every day.
Okay, fair enough. For you to become the leader of the government of this country, you'd have to pick up probably 100 seats. Can you point to an electoral map of this country and tell us what 100 seats you think you've got a shot at winning?
We're running to win all over the country.
Oh, really? Where are the 100 seats you think you can win that you don't have today?
Well, I'm serious. They're all over the country. And whether it's in a Jack Harris in St. John's, or whether it's a Paul Erngout in Nunavut, I could just go through Ray Martin in Alberta. People say, well, you never win in Alberta. Ray Martin, was the leader of the opposition, an NDP leader in Alberta. So I think the possibilities are endless. And you know, I run into people all the time who tell me, Jack, you can't get it, because that's not possible. They told us you couldn't win in Quebec. The NDP would never win in Quebec. We won in Outremont with 50% of the vote, 48.
By-election.
Do you want to place bets on the next one?
I don't bet. But tell me two seats you're going to pick up in Toronto.
Well, I think Marilyn Shirley would make a fantastic member of Parliament in Beaches, and she came close last time.
No, she didn't. She lost by 4,000 last time. It wasn't close.
Well, I think she's going to win this time.
All right.
And then you look at the founder of the Portuguese National Council of Canada, Peter Ferreira, running in Davenport. Look at Ali Naqvi, one of the new visible minorities, a Muslim man, someone who has spoken out on the issues, running in a riding that is completely empty up in Etobicoke North. How about the leader of the Brampton Health Coalition, Jagtar Shergill, running in Brampton West?
You think you can get up to 100?
Well, how long do you want me to keep on going?
Enough. Let's move on. I get you. Okay. But tell me this. You've talked a great deal about change. The issues that you listed in our conversation a few moments ago are the kinds of things that Barack Obama talks a lot about. It seems to me you're consciously making an effort to kind of associate yourself with the kind of campaign the Obama people are running in the United States. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, look, the American approach to politics is very different than ours. We're somewhat more understated. But I think it's fair to say that the Democrats have been saying we need a fundamental change for a long time. Yes, I'm using that kind of language because I think it's needed. And I've been very impressed by how many of our American friends are facing the same kind of issues and have the same worries that we have.
Okay, but
they've been concerned about the Bush administration. Here, people have been concerned about the Bush administration and Stephen Harper's proximity to the Bush agenda when it comes to foreign affairs, climate change, letting the squeeze come down on the middle class. And so the fact that there are some parallels here between what's being talked about in the U.S. With the Democrats and what the New Democrats are talking about here really should...
Totally thought I hit mute. Did not hit mute. All right, now I have returned. That was an interview with Jack Layton. Jack Layton was like a Canadian superhero. Another leader of the NDP party, those that are moderately familiar with Canadian politics will understand, Jagmeet Singh is the current leader of the NDP party. NDP is more progressive than some of the other parties. Not progressive enough for me, but that's how I voted. Was, it was the best of a bad crop, shall we say. A lot of people the world over seem to think Justin Trudeau is wonderful. No. Justin Trudeau is a very boring shit lib. And a lot of really fantastic programs have come about during Justin Trudeau's Prime Minister run. And they have been exclusively because he's had to bow to the requirements of the NDP and Jagmeet Singh. And so things like CERB is often talked about. When COVID struck, we implemented a policy that was like, okay, if COVID fucked you over for your job, we're just going to give you $2,000 a month. Period. There will be no. We're not going to stress too heavily. If you can show that you're not working right now or whatever, $2,000 a month. That helped a tremendous number of people. There was downsides to how we implemented it. It's a policy. There are always going to be problems, but extremely important, and it was done quickly and effectively and saved a lot of people. We're Canadian, saved our Canadian bacon. I was not impacted by that whole thing because of the circumstances of my job. I'm able to work remotely, and I really didn't see an impact aside from not having to buy a bus pass. But a lot of people did. A lot of people suffered pretty heavily, and CERB was there to get them through. That was Jagmeet Singh and the NDP party forcing a better deal for Canadians. Justin Trudeau has a minority government. Minority governments, I think, they're the stuff. I love minority governments because it requires compromise. When you have a majority government, one party decides, real or otherwise, that they have a mandate to do whatever the fuck they consider their thing. And sometimes that can be pretty fucking ugly. A good example would be the days of Ralph Klein here in Alberta. Ralph Klein had a majority government and decided that of the many campaign promises that the Conservatives made, the only one that mattered was a balanced budget. And so he slashed every single public thing, and there was nobody to stop him. We had massive loss of funding for post-secondary education. We had massive loss of funding for public education. We had massive loss of funding for schools. I'll show you an example. One sec. Ooh, wrong one. So here's an example. Oh, fuck off with your advertising yourselves. I just want the damn video. Hear the people cheering. Yay! We destroyed a hospital. Yay! That was cool. Implosions are neat. That's awesome. But yeah, that was during Ralph Klein's tenure. the only majority I'd love to see is NDP, but alas, I'm not sure that'll ever happen in my lifetime. Until then, I hope them to be a strong opposition with a loud voice. So yeah, I definitely agree with minorities being dishy, isn't it? Yeah, unfortunately, a majority government is like that's where corruption loves to grow. In a minority government, you have to you wind up coming up with compromises that are usually for the best for all people, and that's a good thing. So yeah, that video was the Calgary General Hospital, which was our downtown hospital. We actually had two downtown at the time. There was the General Hospital and the Holy Cross. And Holy Cross got sold off and became a bunch of private businesses. And the General Hospital just became a pile of rubble, which they obviously cleaned up. And, you know, they built private healthcare facilities and condos on. What year did that go boom? Let's just see. 1998. 1998. And then we had we had no downtown hospital. Let me just see when the Sheldon Shamir Clinic came about, because that is the downtown hospital now. Sheldon Shamir. Clinic. Where's the? There's a lot of stuff about, like, you know, finding out wait times and stuff. So the Sheldon Shamir Clinic, or Sheldon Shamir Healthcare Center. This is trying to find like I'll switch to the view so you guys can see what I'm doing, but just trying to find the sort of history of the Sheldon Shamir Clinic. There we go. Wikipedia will tell us. Opened spring of 2008. So 1998 to 2008. 10 years we did not have a hospital downtown. We had the 8th and 8th Clinic, and that was it. And the 8th and 8th Clinic was awesome, but also, like, just not enough. You were in Edmonton. This is why you don't remember. Yeah. It was a whole thing. And it was funny because they were talking about it was going to cost, I think the number they said was like $20 billion, or no, I think it was $10 billion to fix it and get it up to appropriate standard. I'll tell you a funny story in a second about that. And therefore it was you know, just smarter to just blow it up. At the same time, we had a construction project for the drop-in center. We built the new drop-in center building, which is a shelter for homeless people and a variety of services and stuff that go hand in hand. And that cost a bunch of millions of dollars I think it was $20 million to put up. And Calgarians were pissy because it was a nice building, and how dare we let homeless people live somewhere decent. And if we had just spent the money to refurbish that space, we could have probably used the General Hospital instead. But whatever. That's just crazy talk. I don't even know if that's apples to oranges or not. I might be completely off base. But so, funny story about the General Hospital. I used to work for a woman who was a registered nurse, and had started her own business and was doing in drug and alcohol testing. But when she was a nurse, she was working at the General Hospital. The General Hospital had windows, like screen windows that you could, like, open the glass part and get air into the room, which was awesome, and also, you know, not how we build hospitals. And the why is actually pretty clear when you hear the story. So there was a guy in, and he was dying. He had gangrene in his legs, and he had already lost his legs, and the stumps were gangrenous, and he was going to die. And they were just sort of, you know, trying to stay ahead of the infection, but it was not working. And he was in his room, and someone had opened the window for him. Well, a fly had caught in it. And so she started her morning, and she goes into his room, and he's unconscious from agony, and there are maggots crawling all over his stumps. And she screams, which I think is legitimate, and runs the fuck out of there and gets a doctor. And the doctor comes rushing, and they take a look, and the doctor's, they go outside, and he's like, you know what? This is going to save his life. Pretend you didn't see anything. And sure enough, maggots from the flies ate all of the dead tissue, and he survived because of this. That's not a medical thing that we do anymore. But that is what saved his life. They couldn't stay on top of the infection with typical surgery and all the other shit. But the maggots did it. Yikes. Wouldn't that smell be extremely present, though, with that? I would assume so. I'm by no means a maggot expert. I've seen them in my day, but I've never had them in my stumps, so I cannot tell you whether that would be smelly or not. I would imagine just the fact that he's riddled with infection would have been bad enough to generate some pretty pungent stink. Either way, interesting. You never think of maggots as the unsung hero of the medical community, and yet for a long time, maggots and like they used to use ants for stitches. They would, hold the skin together and then make an ant bite you and then pop its head off so that its head would just stay with the teeth clamped in, and it would hold your cut, that kind of thing. Leeches, obviously, people have been using leeches medically forever. We forget all the strange and wonderful shit, and yet it still has validity. Maggot healing is definitely an old world style of medicine. Yes, it is. And I'm not saying that, what we need to do is bring back maggots and St. John's wort. Bloodletting, something with the leeches, yeah. And apparently, and I know this because of my expertise in having watched several seasons of Grey's Anatomy, leeches are still commonly used for people who've had problems with skin grafts and things, if I understand correctly. The leeches can be very, very positive for such things. Even I remember reading about thalidomide, and thalidomide is obviously not a classic healing modality of Eastern thought or something like that. Thalidomide is notorious for the fact that thalidomide children, we knew that thalidomide was, among other things, an anti-nauseant. And so doctors were like, hey, pregnant ladies, take a lot of thalidomide. That'll solve the problem. And in classic, early days of medicine blundery, there was horrible deformities to limb growth for children. And there was these things called thalidomide babies, children who are born without proper arms, proper legs, all sorts of stuff. Really, really horrible. But thalidomide is still used in medicine. It's used as a treatment for leprosy. It's used in some cases, I think, as a more experimental treatment in HIV battling. It's just a weird thing. I remember I read a book called All Families Are Psychotic by Douglas Copeland, and that was one of the stories. Was the kid was on thalidomide because he had HIV. So interesting. Yeah, weird. Anyways, Klein blew up a hospital. I don't remember why I brought that up, but it was good. We watched the video, and I remember watching it live on TV when I was a kid and just being like, "Holy fuck, that's so cool!" Because controlled explosions are interesting and wild, and that one in particular just seemed to just shit out the smoke and dust and everything, and the whole city was gross for a couple days. But yeah, that was we were talking about minority governments. No one was like, we need to get rid of that hospital. It's a blight on humanity. It was just that Klein was like, well, I got a mandate to balance the budget. I'm not spending money to fix the hospital, so let's just blow it the fuck up. That's a choice. And when you're in a situation where you don't have a strong opposition holding you accountable, you can do exactly what the fuck you want, and that can go poorly. I watched Ico blow up the silo by the Bonnybrook water treatment. Explosions are cool for sure. Haha. Yes. I think they're badass. We used to go to my buddy Dongo has a property out in a small town called Swalwell, and we would go out there and do all kinds of strange things. Like he made a cannon that is powered. It shoots tennis balls, and it does so through the use of airbags. So we made an airbag cannon that would shoot tennis balls very far. This was not enough for Dongo, and he ended up building his own black powder cannon that shoots bowling balls very, very far. Another of the great stories of Dongo. I'm going to tell us this is a great story, and there's a lesson to be had. So Dongo is not very popular in the town of Swalwell. They don't like him one bit, and it's based on the fact that, if I understand correctly, the way he came about owning this property was CP Rail, Canadian Pacific Railway, were selling off all of these weird tracts of land. They had all of these, like all along the railway line, they had all these strangely shaped chunks of land that they owned, and they just didn't want to own them anymore. So they were selling them off, and he heard something on a news broadcast and was like, oh, I'll look into that. And he called up, and I think he bought his property in Swalwell for like $500, like ridiculously cheap. And it was just empty grass. And his thinking was he would, buy this place and put on it a house, and that would be his retirement place. The people of Swalwell thought that was their space, thought it was their green space, did not realize that it was owned by CP Rail. And then all of a sudden there's this dude storing things there, and they were very upset. That was where their dogs peed, and so he's had nothing but friction. So one day he decided he was going to build a trebuchet, as in like an old-timey catapult. And Dongo was an engineer, and so he built a trebuchet, and he's flinging things with his trebuchet, and it's fun. And he goes back to his home, and he gets a phone call. And it's someone from the town council, and they're like, you can't have a trebuchet. And he's like, why not? And they're like, well, it's a trebuchet. You can't have a trebuchet. And he's like, can you show me where in the town's laws, or in the province's laws, or anywhere's laws that says I can't have a trebuchet? And they're like, we'll get back to you. And then a little while later, they call him back, and they're like, so we just passed a law, and it says you can't have medieval siege weaponry inside the town limits. And Dongo's like, okay, I'm gonna have to, I'll have to talk to my lawyer about this. Calls his lawyer, and his lawyer's like, it's true, they passed a law that you cannot have medieval siege weaponry within the town of Swalwell. However, there's something called the grandfather clause, which means that because your trebuchet was built prior to the passing of the law, you are now the only person in the town of Swalwell who is allowed to have medieval siege weaponry. And so Dongo has siege weaponry in a place where you can't have siege weaponry. So that's fun. Yes, they made a law just for him. He is regularly wet sand in their underpants. He does a bunch of things that just drive them batty. The grandfather law is both a blessing and a curse some days. Haha. It's absolutely, the grandfather law can be like, it serves a very valid purpose, and it's exactly that. It's to prevent someone from passing a law specifically to fuck somebody over. Because having a trebuchet, there's no like, you are entitled to this or anything like that. But he built it, and he wasn't, flinging things at people's houses or anything. He wasn't causing any problems like that. And they just didn't like it, largely because they didn't like him. If I was the town, I'd be like, fuck yeah, let's run with this. Let's like do a whole like medieval thing, and we'll do like medieval feasts, and we'll show people how cannons work and how trebuchets work, and like it'll be a way to get some people to come and give money to the town, because it's not exactly a wealthy metropolis. It's a pretty fucking dire little small town Alberta town, right? But yeah, the grandfather clause. It's got its places. So and it can certainly be abused. Oh yeah, they definitely could have handled that way better. Yes, they absolutely could. It's a weird town though. Like they have done a lot of really really weird stuff. We were gonna do the year 2000, the New Year's Eve to start year 2000. We were talking about, like, wouldn't it be fun to rent out the town hall, play a gig with my old band Johnny Incognito, and it'll we'll advertise it as like, come to Swalwell where you can watch Calgary burn from a safe distance, Y2K Waka Waka. And it was just like an idea we had. And Dongo called the town council and he's like, are you using the town hall? And they're like, no, we haven't got anything planned. We weren't going to do anything. And he's like, okay, well, could we rent it? And they're like, yeah, I don't see why not. And then a little while later they called back and they were like, instead of renting it, what if we use the town hall as the town's New Year's Eve place and you guys could play? And Don's like, all right. And then they called back and they're like, okay, so we're going to have you come out and audition for the part of playing the town's New Year's party. Immediately we knew this was a non-starter, right? It's a small town of conservative people and Johnny Incognito was a loud ass punk rock band. Not gonna happen. But we decided, why not? No, it wasn't even Johnny Incognito, it was the Fabulous Jobs. I'm wrong. It was the Fabulous Jobs, a band I was in prior to Johnny Incognito that no one saw. And so we went out and we played for the town council and it went exactly how you were thinking it went, and it wound up that we did not get to play New Year's. Oh no, they didn't. Yeah, and we weren't too terribly upset about it. Like, Fabulous Jobs was a garbage band. It was literally so I was in a band with Dongo. It was the first band I ever joined, and that fell apart. The singer was a egomaniacal wang ass, and so we split. And wanted to start something else. So my ex-wife, at the time we were married, she had a friend who played guitar, and I was like, hey, do you want to play in a band with me and my drummer buddy? And it was nothing but bad. We were a band for like a year and a half or 2 years. I think in that whole time we played a total of maybe 2 or 3 shows, including to the town council, and it was just bad. And then eventually we ended that band, and I was like, I'm not done. Dongo, are you done? And he's like, no. And I'm like, okay, I've got a student named Shakes, and he's got a brother and a buddy, and let's start a new band. We'll call it Johnny Incognito. And that was how that was born. So if we'd only nailed that gig, the big Swalwell breakout moment, we could have been huge, and Johnny Incognito never would have been. We'd have, and you know what? I wouldn't have met you, Bender, because I met you through Valor. And obviously, if we'd impressed the town council of Swalwell, we'd be like huge. We'd be playing stadiums as the Fabulous Jobs. The origin story of J.I. I love it. Absolutely. Everyone's got an origin. Oh, man. Is there anything else I wanted to comment on? Let me just take a look at my notes. I was going to talk about fluoridation, but I can't find... the reason I wanted to talk about it was somebody put a thing in my mailbox, and it was like, fluoridation is the devil. And, it's the thing that the globalists are putting fluoride in your water to make your children into Jews or some, who knows what the fuck. And I was going to go through it on stream, but I can't seem to find the piece of paper, so that sucks. I don't honestly know much about the whole fluoridation debate. I know that fluoridation has been, Calgary's water has been off and on fluoridated a bunch of times. I'm for it. From the stuff that I have read, which is by no means comprehensive, it looks like fluoridation in the water has basically been not a big deal and has resulted in improved overall health and improved oral health for children in particular, and that's a good thing. When there is fluoridation in the water, there's also a thing where, like, if you can't do fluoridation, you can opt out of the program, and there's ways to do it effectively. But every now and then we'll get some group of chuds will be like, fluoride, that's poison. The same people who go, oh my God, there's chemicals. Doesn't the WHO actually advise the use of it? As far as I understand things, again, what I was planning on doing was sort of digging into that, and I guess we can do that. Like, let's take a quick. It won't be an exhaustive journey, and I won't have the fun of mocking the folks who are anti-fluoride. Let's just jump to Google and let's go World Health Organization fluoride recommendations. So this is from the World Health Organization's website. Rolling revision of the WHO guidelines for drinking water quality. This is a draft for review and comments, not for citation. I don't know what I'm looking at, so let's find out. And this is like a 12-page long thing, so we're not going to... So fluoride has had both beneficial and detrimental effects on human health. In terms of dental health, the prevalence of dental caries is inversely related to the concentration of fluoride in drinking water. While there is a dose-response relationship between the concentration of fluoride in drinking water and the prevalence of dental fluorosis. In terms of general health, in communities where drinking water and foodstuffs are excessively high in fluoride, skeptical fluorosis and bone fracture are the most relevant adverse effects. However, there are also other sources of fluoride. Processes such as desalination will remove virtually all fluoride from water. In terms of using such sources for drinking water, the implications for public health will strongly depend on local circumstances. However, the public health requirement is to maximize the beneficial effects of fluoride in drinking water supplies for caries prevention whilst minimalizing the unwanted dental and potential general health effects. So I think what I'm seeing here is it's a double-edged sword, and the advice is to sort of assess the overall, like, in this community, is there optimal fluoride in other areas? So the etiology of dental caries involves the interplay of the tooth surface between certain oral bacteria and simple sugars, example sucrose, derived from the diet. In the absence of these sugars in foods and drinks, in the absence of those sugars in foods and drinks, dental caries will not be a public health problem. However, when sugar consumption is high or is increasing, dental caries will be or will become a major public health problem unless there is appropriate intervention. Removing fluoride from a local drinking water supply by desalination could potentially exacerbate an existing or developing dental public health problem. So that's an interesting thing. What I didn't realize is that we're not talking about adding fluoride to the water. We're talking about there is fluoride in the water, and we are removing it through desalination. Fluoride intake in man. Fluoride is widely distributed in the lithosphere, mainly as fluorspar, fluorapatite, and cryolite, and is recognized as the 13th most common element in the Earth's crust. It is found in seawater at concentrations of around 1.2 to 1.4 milligrams per liter, in groundwater at concentrations up to 67 milligrams per liter, and in most surface waters at concentrations less than 0.1 milligrams per liter. Fluoride is also found in foods, particularly fish and tea. Whilst almost all foodstuffs contain at least traces of fluoride, water and non-dairy beverages are the main source of ingested fluoride, accounting for 66 to 80% of fluoride intake in U.S. adults, according to the concentration of fluoride in the public drinking water. Other significant sources of ingested fluoride are toothpaste in very young children, who tend to swallow most of their toothpaste, tea in tea-drinking communities, and inhaled fluoride in some communities in China, where coal containing very high levels of fluoride is burned indoors. Absorption of ingested fluoride is via the stomach and small intestine. So when people are like, yeah, you brush your teeth, it's true that you're putting fluoride on your teeth, and that's a good thing, but you're not like ingesting fluoride as a result, except for the small trace amount that you would get just by swallowing your own spit goo after brushing your teeth. Most of the fluoride in water either naturally occurring or added will be in the form of free fluoride ion, IPCS 2002. The effect of water hardness in the range of 0 to 500 milligrams CaCO3 per liter has little effect on ionic dissociation and therefore little effect on the bioavailability of fluoride. Absorption of a standard dose of fluoride will vary from 100% on a fasting stomach to 60% when taken with a calcium-rich breakfast. Anyway, so yeah, that seems to be the gist of it, is they're saying that fluoride, important. Not all communities need to consider the use of fluoride. In some cases, the atmospheric fluoride or the fluoride from other sources may be more than enough, and in fact, you could be introducing problems with things like, broken bones and stuff. So, in order to really understand the fluoride debate in Alberta, we would need to understand what our overall fluoride intake looks like and exposure to fluoride would look like. And I don't have a clue on that, so I'm not sure. What I did not know, that fluoride was present in those things like tea, etc. I did not know that either, actually. Yeah, I definitely gathered it should be taken as a case-by-case basis. That seems to be what the World Health Organization's statement is, and certainly what the vibe that I got out of that was fluoride good, except where not. And even except where not may be not entirely accurate. It may just be like, you want some fluoride, but not as much. And there's probably some mystical maths that one could do to find the right balance for a particular population. The people who want no fluoride in the water are usually very, very, like, absolutely not. Fluoride bad. Fluoride is a poison. Too much of a good thing isn't always a good thing in this case. Exactly. It's like sex. If you have too much sex, your penis will fall off. Nobody wants that. Whereas if you don't have enough sex, your penis will fall on. And therefore, the right answer is the third bowl of porridge of sex. Just right. I'm just kidding. I don't even have a lot of sex, so I don't know. I remember it being fun. I remember it was a good time. I quite enjoy Captain Winky being where he's at. Yeah, you don't want that shit falling off. Unless you want that shit falling off, in which case, 100% support and endorse and love and all that kind of stuff. But me personally, I'd like to keep my wiener. That's just personal stuff. I guess one of the questions we could ask is, I wonder if I can find, let me just quickly switch over and we'll see if I can find online the arguments against for, like, in Alberta. Maybe I can even find that invalid fluoride. So, yeah, in 2021, after a decade of cavities, Calgary will put fluoride back in its water. CBC News has ready to vote again. Calgary.ca, fluoride in Calgary's water. AHS, Alberta Health Services, launches a pro-fluoride campaign in Calgary. I want to find, like, angry takes. Is there, like, a anti-fluoride Calgary? Well, I'm sure this will work. Maybe not. 2019 fluoride debate at Calgary City Hall spills outside of chamber. I hope this is way cooler than it sounds like. Every child that came in was in pain, had infection, and was crying. Can we find? No, I don't think we're looking in the right spot here. I just want to find, like, the angry peoples. Safe Water Calgary. This will be I think it. Protect my brain. Don't fluoridate the water. My brain. Okay. A statement from Safe Water Calgary, who we are and what we believe. Artificial water fluoridation is a serious public health threat to many Calgarians and to citizens in Edmonton, Toronto, and Regina. It's not just Alberta, and it's not just Canada's problem. Fluoridation's well-documented health risks are not confined by provincial or national borders. The best studies published in the world's leading journals provide solid evidence that it can significantly lower IQ in children. Many of these studies have been led by Canadian scientists. Fluoride is a known neurotoxin and an endocrine disruptor that can exacerbate diabetes, kidney disease, hypothyroidism, bone fractures, and many other harmful conditions, whether in Calgary, New York City, or Sydney. Most nations and cities have long rejected or not even considered fluoridation. 95% of the world's people drink unfluoridated water, 97% in Europe, where numerous countries prohibit it, including France, Germany, Sweden, and the Netherlands. In Canada, both British Columbia and Quebec are 98% fluoridation free, and there's no evidence they have higher cavity rates than provinces with higher fluoridation rates. Let's just look and see if we can find. Maybe there's rates of dental cavities, Alberta, BC. Let's just see. Maybe we'll dental fees. Yeah, we're not going to find. It would be nice if there was like an immediate link that was like, oh yeah, here's what you're talking about. But yeah, that's not going to happen. We're proud to work with other advocates across Canada and all over the world. We're helping to protect health wherever you live, whatever political party you belong to, and whatever you believe about other controversial topics. We're an all-volunteer grassroots, so I've got nothing against that. I'm making the hick voice, but it's because I'm a dink. We'll continue to speak truth to power until this outdated and dangerous practice is ended. And then I think this might be this isn't the same thing that I got, but vote no to fluoridation on chemicals. So there's a therapist, a financial advisor, a psychologist, and a physician. Of those people, they probably all have, well, not the financial advisor. Like, what the fuck do you know, Ronald? I've been a financial advisor in Calgary for many years. Fluoridation of our water is estimated to cost an enormous sum, at least $30 million. Proponents said the city won't raise water fees to pay for this, but this money doesn't just come from nowhere. It comes from us, the taxpayer. Who will pay for it? I like my shiny rock system, thank you. It comes from us, the taxpayers. Think of how many other services the city's giving up for fluoridation, where 99% of it literally goes down the drain through toilets, sinks, showers, lawns, and car washes. That's a total waste of taxpayer money. Now, this is why I love financial advisors, because we would need to effectively look at the cost of a properly implemented system with where we're not encouraging, bone breaks and all the other kinds of stuff, and the cost impact of having the children not have the dental problems, because there is a very serious cost impact. Kids who have bad mouths will cost money for overall health concerns. This is just the fact of things and the way that teeth work. They're in your mouth, so if your mouth is full of rotting teeth, then you're actually swallowing plaque and badness, and that's a thing. So Richard Donaldson here, who is obviously a very good financial advisor, is like, it costs a lot to do, and therefore it's stupid. But any good financial advisor will understand the concept of the break-even analysis, where you can say, it costs a lot to do, how much value do we get out of that? Will it pay for itself? Will it be a net positive? And I don't see any information one way or the other. Jennifer Alexander is a single mom from Calgary. Her son is 5 years old, and she wants him to reach his full potential. How can the city even consider adding a known neurotoxin that has been shown in dozens of studies to lower IQ and increase ADHD rates at levels in fluoridated water? This is outrageous. How many thousands of babies and children have to be put at risk? I ask all mothers and fathers to protect their families by voting no. Okay. Well, Jennifer Alexander, therapist, I'm not sassing you when I say I don't think that you're correct in your statement. Yes, fluoride is a neurotoxin. That does not mean that by getting it in our system, the government is attacking our neurology. It's in the water, and that's your Jesus put it in the water. To be fair, it's a question of looking at how much is being introduced into the body and whether or not that's a good thing. And again, I don't have the numbers, but this take is all based on, well, I read a thing that said that if you have fluoride in your water, it will make your children ADHD dumbos, and I don't want that for my child because he's special and wonderful, and ADHD would obviously be the thing that makes children stupid and dumb, so I don't want it. These various viewpoints are golden. See, now going off what the WHO said about natural intake, maybe, yeah, those places would require it because too much of a good thing. Haha, exactly. Wait, fluoride causes ADHD. I have something to blame now. My life is complete. If we get fluoride water, I get an ADHD diagnosis finally. Right? it's a win-win. Jennifer Fountain, psychologist. I'm a practicing psychologist in Calgary and a mother with 2 small children. I urge you to vote no on fluoridation. In any profession, or in my profession, I understand when people are faced with making a decision on an unfamiliar topic, they often turn to those they consider experts. What she means is Jews. In fluoridation's case, it appears many of our authority figures haven't kept up on the most recent studies showing fluoridation's health risks. When this happens, it serves us to seek knowledge and let truth be our authority, not authority over truth. Actually, that was me being unfair. Nothing she says here is incorrect. Well, at least as far as the overall gist of it. I think it's wrong to say that that many of our authority figures haven't kept up on the most recent studies, because, yeah, they probably have. Give me my free Dexedrine, goddammit. Right? Who doesn't want the free Dex? It sounds like a gum brand. Hey, I'm chewing some free Dex. And let me see there. When I got the flyer in the mail, it wasn't that one. Oh, it's too bad, because they actually had a dentist, and I would actually be interested in what the dentist has to say. But let's look at the physician, Dr. Robert Dixon. I can't think Dixon without thinking of the old roller derby friend of mine, whose roller derby name was Dixon Cider. I'm a practicing doctor in Calgary who's been studying fluoridation for over 2 decades. I once thought it was good, but changed my mind when I examined the science, which showed that fluoride is extremely toxic. It's an endocrine disruptor and can harm the thyroid, kidneys, bones, and brain, especially by lowering IQs in children. Fluoride isn't necessary for a single body function, yet it's being used as a drug. Virtually all drugs can have harmful side effects. Once in the water, you can't control the dose. If you can't control the dose, you can't control the harm. Using drinking water to administer any drug is inappropriate. Now, again, water has fluoride. That's one of the things that water doth do. The fact that this is a physician actually causes me a great deal of concern, because this whole statement is somebody who is claiming that they've looked at the science, but in fact seems to not understand how science is working. First off, it's not being used as a drug. It's being used in the way that fluoride is used, which is you absorb it through your stomach lining, and it results in strengthening your teeth and preventing caries. So when he says it isn't necessary for a single bodily function, fighting caries, you're right, that's not a bodily function, because your body doesn't intrinsically do that, because we actually weren't meant that. If you look at, and this is a fascinating bit of paleoanthropology that I got from my buddy Dongo, who we were talking about earlier, but is also both an engineer and a paleoanthropologist with a doctorate in the topic. So the teeth of old-timey skulls don't have caries. And they weren't really sure why, because clearly, Paleolithic man was not big on making sure that they brushed after every meal. But what they've determined is that it was the agricultural revolution that turned us into a more agrarian society that introduced the kinds of plaque that cause caries, because we're eating foods that are higher in sugars and other complex carbohydrates, and these breed that plaque. So that's a whole thing. So yes, our body does not naturally strengthen our teeth through fluoride. That's kind of the point, Dr. Robert Dixon. And your arguments about the fact that it can harm the thyroid, the kidneys, etc. Yeah, the World Health Organization's article that we just read says exactly that, and implies that there's some calculations to do to determine the appropriate quantity to introduce into a population, if any, because of their reality. This is just like the minute that there is fluoride in the water, all of a sudden our children will be dumb, and there's no reason for it. That's bad. It's true, once it's in the water you can't control the dose. That is valid, and certainly people do drink more water than they need to. Especially, we have this like cult of water happening right now where everyone's like, you need to drink 8 glasses of water a day. No, you fucking don't. You need to drink water more, most likely, and you certainly need to drink water when you are feeling thirsty. But 8 glasses of water a day may or may not be what your body needs, and to assume that that's the bar that you have to hit is incorrect. I've been fighting COVIDiots too much. I'm screaming, citation needed. Oh, yes. That's the nice thing about it. This is a flyer, so you can't really expect that it's going to be like loads and loads of citations, but fluoridation is especially harmful to low-income families. What a thing. It is minimally effective for everyone, regardless of their income level, which we know to be false. Even worse, low-income families cannot afford expensive filters and bottled water to avoid it. They have no choice but to expose themselves and their children to this toxin. It is highly unethical to put them in this difficult no-win situation. Okay, that's some bullshit. That is some all-the-way bullshit, and I'm going to explain. The implication, in order for that statement to be true, the implication is that no matter what, there's no benefit and nothing but detriment from exposing people to fluoride. And that obviously the appropriate thing to do would be then to buy expensive filters or bottled waters or whatever in order to avoid it. And that there's no middle ground. Either you are destroying somebody's life, or they are using filters and bottled water and all that kind of stuff. And therefore, low-income families are doomed. Doomed, I tell you. This is a way for the government to make sure that all the poors have ADHD. Only that's not the case. That's just bad thinking. I listen to my body. It tells me when I need water, and when I don't, it's so simple, really. The funny thing is, as a species, we're actually shitty at that now, because so much of what we drink is sweet. As a result, we often feel hungry when we're not hungry because we're thirsty, but we have kind of like blurred the ability to tell the difference between the two. This gets resolved when you drink more water, but it's a thing. Oh, they're really using the poverty issue as a talking point. Absolutely. And this is exactly why, because the reality is poor people benefit from fluoridated water because they don't have costly, non-publicly funded dental bills, or at least there's a dramatic reduction in dental bills. This is just facts. So if you rule out any positive benefit and you just pretend like it's not even on the table, then yeah, absolutely, their statement is true, except that the actual cost-benefit analysis is pretty goddamn clear that poor people with fluoridated water have much lower requirement for especially childhood dental issues. Why? I'll touch on a couple of things. Why you should say no to fluoridation. It pollutes Calgary's pure, clean water. Fluoridation promoters say fluoride is natural. There's nothing natural about the chemical typically used to fluoridate drinking water. Fluorosilicic acid, an industrial byproduct of the phosphate fertilizer industry, as hard as it is to believe. Unless it's used for fluoridation or industrial use, it must be disposed of as a hazardous waste. As a matter of public record, it can contain lead and arsenic, for which there are no safe levels. Okay, for that whole thing is factually wrong. I don't know about what kind of fluoride we're introducing into the water system. My understanding is we were just talking about like no longer desalinating it to get rid of the fluoride. But let's just say for a moment that this is true, that they are actually talking about introducing a that fucking acid, whatever. Okay, and maybe it's an industrial byproduct. Maybe that is a thing. And maybe if you have a giant clump of this particular type of acid, you have to dispose of it as a hazardous waste. That is probably 100% accurate. I'm going to give them that. That does not mean it's bad for you. It means that in quantity, it can be generally damaging, which we all agree. It has potential to harm kidneys. It has potential to cause bones to be weakened. But again, the dose is the key. This is such a misleading statement because it's implying that any dose is toxic. So the experts say no. This is from Dmitry Christakis, who is an MD, Seattle physician and editor of the Journal of American Medical Association Pediatrics. I would not want my wife to drink fluoridated water if she were pregnant. That was from the Washington Post. Hey, maybe he wouldn't. Nothing wrong with that. Again, that might be a thing to consider. I don't know if there's a relationship between birth defects and fluoridation. Who knows? That might be worth looking at. And it might be something that we say, okay, well, people who are who are expecting should not be exposed to fluoridated. I don't know. Not saying it's impossible, but just because one doctor once said a thing doesn't make it. These guys always talk about the argument from authority, and then they're like, a doctor said a thing. So Bruce Lampier, an MD and MPH award-winning physician and researcher from Simon Fraser University. It is time to protect kids' developing brains from fluoride. Is it? Are you sure? And then we have Hardy Lineback, who is a DDS, so a dentist, PhD, former head of preventative dentistry and scientist at the University of Toronto. In my opinion, the evidence that fluoridation is more harmful than beneficial is now overwhelming. And again, that's potentially true if we're talking about just blanket fluoridating water. What we are talking about, according to the World Health Organization, is finding a balance to a certain amount of fluoridation and a certain amount of what you get. I'm so tired of these assholes and their bullshit lies. What I'm tired about is that they don't understand that they're bad thinking, or they understand it and don't care. When these kinds of arguments come up and they always say, this doctor, I always question what kind of doctor they are and what their interest is in the topic. So yeah, like these doctors, the last one is a doctor of dental surgery. So that's a dentist. That's a legitimate, this person would know what they're talking about. And for them to have said that in their opinion, the evidence that fluoridation is more harmful than beneficial is now overwhelming. Okay, let's take a look at when that was said and why that was said, because context is key. And I'm opening a can of worms. I have no idea. Hardy Lineback. Ooh, come on. Hardy Lineback. And fluoride. Okay. Is a Canadian retired full professor and former head of preventative dentistry at the University of Toronto. He received his PhD. He's 70 years old. Okay. He doesn't look 70. Oh, it's from 2000. Okay, that's 21 years ago. That's fair. But yeah, this is April 2000. So we like to talk about not keeping up with the latest of data, but you're quoting a guy from the year 2000, 21 years ago. Since April of 1999, I have publicly decried the addition of fluoride, especially hydrofluosilicic acid, to drinking water for the purpose of preventing tooth decay. The following summarize my reasons. Okay. Modern studies published in the 80s and 90s show dental decay rates are so low in North America that the effects of water fluoridation cannot be measured. Because of the low prevalence of dental decay, water fluoridation studies today must be carefully conducted to correct for mobility of subjects between fluoridated and non-fluoridated areas, access to fluoride from other sources, the lack of blind. So this is a valid statement. This is what the World Health Organization is talking about. Is you can't just have a blanket all water gets fluoridated, because people will have different experiences based on the fluoride in their universe and all that kind of stuff. And the idea that dental decay rates are so low in North America that the effects of water fluoridation cannot be measured is, I believe, also valid, except that since we have removed fluoridation from various areas, we have come to find that now it can be looked at. So in the 80s and 90s, that may have been a valid take. It may not be a valid take now. The major reasons for the general decline of tooth decay worldwide, both in non-fluoridated and fluoridated areas, is the widespread use of fluoridated toothpaste. Absolutely true. Improved diets and overall improved general and dental health, antibiotics, preservatives, hygiene, etc. All of that is true. All of that has led to a decline in tooth decay, but it is not the only thing. So we have seen that the level of tooth decay in populations where they have removed fluoridation has increased and has markedly increased. So that's a thing. Just quickly taking a look. I am back. I am Canadian is back. They're quoting someone who was a PhD who they had sitting through a gazillion PhDs who said otherwise. In other words, cherry-picked some lone asshole that agreed or appeared to agree with them and twisted the words. Fuck them. I hope they go to a COVID party and catch it. Totally. Confirmation bias in its purest form. I'm ready to go to chat with Bob and light that fucking match too, though. Fair. So now there's a better understanding of how fluoride prevents dental decay. What little benefit fluoridated water may still provide is derived primarily through topical measures, means the teeth erupt and come in contact with fluorides in the oral cavity. Not actually what the World Health Organization was saying. The World Health Organization was saying that we absorb the fluoride from our through the stomach, and that is a good thing. Fluoride does not need to be swallowed to be effective. Again, arguable. It is not an essential nutrient, nor should it be considered a desirable supplement for children living in non-fluoridated areas. Okay, again, like, this is depending on how you're referring. Like, I wouldn't want your kid to go buy fluoride pills and take them as a supplement, if that's the case. Absolutely. Hydro whatever acid is recovered from the smokestack scrubbers during the production of phosphate fertilizer and sold to most of the major cities in North America, which uses this industrial grade source of fluoride to fluoridate drinking water rather than the more expensive pharmaceutical grade solution fluoride salt. So that's probably true. I have no reason to doubt it. However, the fact that something comes as a result of the production of whatever phosphates, fertilizer, whatever, doesn't make it inherently bad. It could very well be bad, but we don't know. The assumption that just because it came out of smokestack scrubbers, it's bad, is a faulty assumption. Presumably, if it's actually if it's good quality product and if we've done validated testing on it, okay. But that may not be the case, right? Half of all ingested fluoride remains in the skeletal system and accumulates with age. Several recent epidemiological studies suggest that only a few years of fluoride ingestion from fluoridated water increases the risk of bone fracture. Relationship between the milder symptoms of bone fluorosis, joint pain and arthritic symptoms, and fluoride accumulation in humans has never been investigated. people unable to eliminate fluoride under normal conditions, kidney impairment, or people who ingest more than average amounts of water, athletes, diabetics, are more at risk to be affected by the toxic effects of fluoride. And I can't speak to the science. That may very well be true. This may be a completely viable argument. Dose-dependent relationship between the prevalence, severity of dental fluorosis and fluoride ingestion. That's what the World Health Organization was saying. We need to make sure that we're doing this in a meaningfully thoughtful way to ensure that we're not overdoing, we're not underdoing, we're finding that balance based on environmental, fluoride, etc. So he's not wrong in there. A lifetime of excessive fluoride ingestion will undoubtedly have detrimental effects. Totally true. If you have too much fluoride, it will be a bad thing. So Dr. Hardy Limeback, I would say, again, he's a DDS, former head of the preventative dentistry at the University of Toronto, is an expert, and I would say that at the time of this writing, this was all very valid argumentation. However, once again, this was in April 2000. I find it hilarious that this whole thing keeps going, people haven't kept up with the science, and they're quoting a guy from 2000. Okay. So we talked a little bit about some fluoride, and I remain unchanged on my take on it. I missed a whole bunch of chat. You guys are going crazy. Just pass the Dutchie on the left-hand side, and I'll ensure the fire catches. Feels like they took an idea and ran as many tests as needed to confirm their lunacy. I don't think it's that. I think realistically, and perhaps I'm being sort of overly kind here, but the impression I get is that what they did was looked at information that was coming out and said, we don't have all the answers. We should probably question this. I am not opposed to that. That's what science is supposed to do. I just think that since 2000, we've probably done some of those questions, and the World Health Organization's pretty much on the same stance of yes, fluoride good, but with the added provision of let's find that balance in a particular area. Accredited pseudoscientists are pretty much experts in all things. Me, I prefer homeopathy with my scotch. I only drink homeopathic scotch. They didn't fully understand the studies they were looking at and made some unhealthy stretches without taking into account the actual purpose of said study. Totally agree. High quality H2O. I understand if you inhale too much dihydrogen monoxide, you'll die. It's bad stuff. Yeah, man, that dihydrogen monoxide, I don't know if you know this, but one of the ways that you get dihydrogen monoxide is through forcing. They have these systems where they will basically force molecules of hydrogen and oxygen and make them essentially pair bond, which is like rape essentially, and specifically to get fluoride. It's an industrial process. Also, if you break down dihydrogen monoxide, you actually can get electricity. So do you need that in your body? I don't think so. Ask the fluoride deniers and anti-vaxxers if they're against dihydrogen monoxide. Jim, there are people who will fucking fill bathtubs with this dihydrogen monoxide. That's just dangerous. That is just dangerous. Filling up a bathtub or a big thing. I've heard of people, and this is horrifying, but they will actually take legitimate balloons, fill them full of dihydrogen monoxide, and throw them at children. Can you fucking imagine that? That is disgusting. And they're spraying it all over their crops. Jesus, we're in the end times, people. Fucking lethal. Combine that with fluoride mofo. I also know nebulizing peroxide is bad, yet here we are, lol. What it boils down to is people, a lot of the times, regular people don't understand what is a reasonable take and what isn't. So when we're talking about toxins, yes, there are toxins, and sometimes they're super dangerous, but that doesn't mean that the toxin is always dangerous. It's a question of how much. Think about it like this: a brick is not toxic to your body and that you can touch a brick and not die. If you touch enough bricks simultaneously, you will die because they will crush you. That doesn't mean bricks are guilty of crushing all the time. I just found injecting bleach to cure most forms of cancer. Oh my God! Like, are you joking about I've done this, or are you like you just found a website that they're like injecting bleach to cure cancer? Because that would be fucking. Whew. I found expert advice. I had an expert tell me pure turpentine will cure a huge amount of things as well. It absolutely will. One of the things it'll cure is life. And I don't want that cure. All right, I think it's time for some humiliations. Do you want to see some humiliations? Do you want me to humiliate myself? Answer me, Chad. Answer me. Answer, Daddy. Ooh, that just got weirder and grosser. I would not doubt it if you were like, no, don't do it. Yep, it's 100% cure for that. Yep, totally. You don't want me to do it? Okay. I'm not doing Nickelback. I got plans. I feel like I'm not even going to tell you. I'm just going to do the humiliations. And you can experience them for the first time. Let me just get the thing on screen. And then... Okay. Stevie Wonder. You know, I take requests for next time. But today, I'm going to give you the good and I'm going to give you the bad. And it will be awesome. So here's the good. I don't even know if I can sing this. We'll find out. Okay. That's right. Hungry Eyes. Eric Carmen. God, the 80s were awesome. And by awesome, I mean fucking terrible. I seriously don't know if I know the tune of this song. I know the chorus. I've been meaning to tell you. Oh. This feeling won't subside. I remember now. I look at you and I fantasize. You're mine tonight. Now I've got you in my sights. With these hungry eyes. Am I on the wrong note? When I look at you and I can't disguise, I've got hungry eyes. I feel the magic between you and I wanna hold you, so hear me out. I think I'm way wrong on this. I wanna show you what love's all about. Ooh, that's gotta be wrong. Darling, tonight. Oh, I'm way off. Now I've got you in my sights. With these hungry eyes. I'm not sure. Wanna look at you and I can't disguise. I've got hungry eyes. I feel the magic between you and I've got hungry eyes. Got you in my sights with those hungry eyes. Now did I take you by surprise? Shit, I don't know the verse at all. I know the chorus, but the verse, no. And to see you. This love was meant to be. Ooh. Listen to that sax though. Like, it's worth it just for the sax. Do you type that with your left hand? Y'all are monsters. God, this can't go on forever. I've got hungry eyes. Wanna look at you and I can't disguise. I've got hungry eyes. I feel the magic between you and I. I've got hungry eyes. Now I've got you in my sights with those hungry eyes. Did I take you by surprise with my hungry eyes? Hungry eyes. Now I've got you in my sights with my hungry eyes. Fucking socialist. I can never unhear this. You're right. You will never unhear Eric Carmen, who sounds a lot like Eric Cartman.
Hungry eyes. Now I've got you on my sides.
And that takes us to the good karaoke. I know the bad. I think this is this. It should have been backwards. This is Rawhide. Rolling, 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 rolling. I don't know if I can sing this or not because it's weird. Rolling, 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 rolling. Though the streams are swollen. Oh, I'm early. Fuck. Rolling, rolling. Though the streams are swollen. Keep them doggies rolling. Rawhide. Rain and wind and weather, hell-bent for leather, wishing my gal was by my side. All the things I'm missing, good victuals, love and kissing, are waiting at the end of my ride. Move 'em on, hit 'em up, move 'em on, hit 'em on, move 'em on, hit 'em up, rawhide. Cut 'em out, ride 'em in, cut 'em out, cut 'em out, ride 'em in, rawhide. Oh fuck. Moving, 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 though they're disapproving. Keep them doggies moving, rawhide. Don't try to understand them, just rope, throw, and brand them. Soon they'll be living high and wide. My heart's calculating, my true love will be waiting, waiting at the end of my ride. Move 'em on, hit 'em up, move 'em on, hit 'em up, rawhide. Cut 'em out, ride 'em in, cut 'em out, ride 'em in, rawhide. Yeah! Instrumental break. Let's see what's chat thinking. Take the out of the country, Jim. Oh, you monsters. It's your favorite Nickelback song. Move 'em on, hit 'em up, move 'em on, hit 'em up, rawhide. Cut 'em out, ride 'em in, cut 'em out, ride 'em in, rawhide. Yeah! You know what? I feel like I'm gonna take a request from chat. You can see Kenny's pucker from here. It's all we care about. Chat, what do you want me to sing? First answer. If I can find karaoke, I will sing it. Just because that's how much fun I've had with you today. And Kenny's pucker, "Fly by Night" by Rush. I don't know if I know the song. I'm not really a Rush person. Karaoke, "Fly by Night." Let's see if they have it. They do. How does it go? I don't know this one well enough to do. I will save us right now. And yeah, "Every Rose Has Its Thorn" by Poison. We have a winner. All right. Interesting story about this particular song. So when I lived in the house that I currently live in with the Bastards, Mikey Bastard used to threaten that if he ever heard me being with a lady that he would sit outside my door with an acoustic guitar and play Every Rose Has Its Thorn. So now it's my turn. Let's see if this is... Oh, it's gonna be beautiful. Oh, did I switch back? I did. We both lie silently still in the dead of the night. Although we both lie close together, we're still miles apart inside. Was it something I said or something I did? Did my words not come out right? Oh, I tried not to hurt you. Yeah, I tried. But I guess that's why they say every rose has its thorns. Just like every night has its dawn. Just like every cowboy sings a sad, sad song. Every rose has its thorn. Yeah, it does, baby. It's like we're slow dancing. Listen to your favorite song playing on the radio. Oh, the DJ say love's a game of easy come and easy go. But I wonder, does he know? Has he ever felt like this? And I know that you'd be here right now if I could let you know somehow. I guess every rose has its thorns. Just like every night has its dawn. Just like every cowboy sings a sad, sad song. Every rose has its song. Though it's been a while now, I can still feel so much pain. Like the knife that cuts you, the wound heals, but the scar, that scar remains.
Well, bars. Soviet Russia instrumental break only 4 bars.
This is beautiful. I don't know if you know this is beautiful. This is beautiful. I know I could have saved our love that night if I'd known what to say. Instead of making love, we both made our separate ways. And now I hear you found somebody new, and that I never meant fuck all to you. To hear that tears me up inside, and to see you cuts me like a knife. I guess every rose has its thorn. Just like every night has its dawn. Just like every cowboy sings a sad, sad song. Every rose has its thorn. Fucking beautiful, eh? Just fucking beautiful. That song is a classic. Alright, I karaoke'd enough. I've humiliated. I did the humiliations. I feel good about my life. Let's see what I missed. High fidelity stereo. Did you know it sounds great in stereo? Fuck mono. Is it wrong to rip my ears out and stuff them into bloody holes as far as they'll go at this point? Yes, that would be wrong. It would be a bad choice. I have sharp, rusty utensils close at hand for similar reasons. I felt a spike in humidity. Wait, why am I naked all of a sudden? What the fuck is this wizardry? What does the K in K-Y stand for? Obviously, Ken. Because K-Y is Ken-Tucky. Why do I want to Google this now? It's a, inquiring minds want to know. That said, I have been talking for 3.5 hours. I have been singing. And now, I believe it is time for me to bid you all adieu, as the French would say. Or as they call themselves, le French. So, yeah. Morbid curiosity is my downfall. That's, they say curiosity killed the cat. And that's that, or, just being in that sack with all the stuff tied around the top of it in the water was probably a bit of a thing too. It's been a slice. Chat soon. Thank you, Bender. Thank you, I Am Canadian. Thank you, YYC Live Music. I couldn't remember your handle. And all else who joined. If you are new, click follow. If you are not new, and no hope for the Nate. I see. Hi Nate. If you are not new, then I don't know, unclick follow and then click it again, just so I feel good. Probably don't do that. That's probably not necessary. But yeah, that's gonna be it. I did all the things, and now goodbye. Parting is such sweet sorrow.